going on?
Schmitty, you're muted.
Yep, Schmitty is muted real quick, and then we'll get Chris's reaction. Still muted, man. We're trying to figure this out as
there we go. There we go. Oh, I think your mic is muted now. Now you got to press the little button on the mic.
And
hey,
action.
There we go. Good morning, guys.
Guys, good to spend time with you. It's 1 o'clock here, nearing 1 o'clock, and Scott Frost dismissed by Nebraska Athletic Director Trev Alberts. We'll have full coverage of the press conference that begins at 3 o'clock. And we have commentary for you. You can find us on our social channels as well, Twitter and Facebook for KFOR, ESPN Lincoln 96 Kicks, and even the Real Red Reaction YouTube channel. We'll be joined by Bill Dolman and Mark Kranak very shortly. Get their take as well. Guys, we spent time talking about this in the aftermath of last night's shocking loss, 45-42, to a Sun Belt team. And the question was not if, but when. When would Trev Alberts make a move? When would Trev say, okay, I've seen enough? And the thought was this: if you're the athletic director, and we all walked out of the stadium last night, some of us at different points in time, but it was still that same expression, that same look of disbelief on a number of Nebraska fans you bumped into, where they just shake their head. If you wait, you lose the emotional investment each time, right? You get more numb to this product that's been on the field. And it's not just a Frost thing. It's been 2 decades, but the leadership was not what it needed to be. And Trev Alberts made a decision. Mickey Joseph will be interim coach, and Nebraska will move forward. You can still salvage this football season, and you're going to do it with a different voice and different leadership. And that's the good news moving forward. You feel and hurt for Scott Frost if you're a Nebraska fan, because many of you grew up cheering for him. You remember him. I remember the presser. Remember the announcement back in 2017 going into 2018. You got the pick, the hottest coach in college football, to come back home and resurrect the program. And it just never worked out. It never got off the ground. There was always some sort of stumble. There was some sort of lack of opportunity to get really any forward momentum. And do you agree with Trev making a move now versus October 1st? I don't think the fan base, fellas, could have waited or wanted to wait till October 1st to save $7.5 million with that buyout. You needed change. Change was made this morning. Nebraska can go into Oklahoma with a new voice and the rest of the season with a new voice, because it was just too much of an accumulation. And then it manifested one more time last night in an upset loss.
Hey, Chris,
and I'll add something that I said last night really fast, Will, is not only is this a message to your own fans, it's a message to people across the country. With the national stage that big noon kickoff is next week against Oklahoma, this is a message to the rest of the country that Nebraska doesn't accept this. Because I think people have started to think that over the past couple of years that, well, in another program, Scott would have been fired after year 3. Another program would have been fired after year 4. And Nebraska has kept on giving him more and more leash. And this was the sign from Trev that, you know what, this has been unacceptable. This is not the Nebraska standard. And whenever we're on the national stage next week, it's not going to be the talk of, man, Nebraska just keeps on allowing a poor head coach to continue coaching and continue losing. It's time for a change, and they're going to get a chance to show that on the national stage against Oklahoma next week.
Hey, boys, we got Mark Kranak on the line. Here he is.
Kranak, you got us okay?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, good to be with you, fellas. A little surprised. How about you?
The arm wrestling match was this. Do you make a move today? It's 9/11. Do you make a move, or do you wait with the buyout looming and dropping to 7.5? Mark, I don't think the fan base could afford to wait. You can change the conversation for the season. And who knows where the season goes, but you have a new leader in Mickey Joseph, and it wasn't going to get better, but more likely get worse with Oklahoma coming to town. This at least gives the fan base a little bit of hope right now that, all right, maybe it can get better. Maybe different will be better and good for 2022, because just too many missteps, too much, I should say not enough development. And when it came to evaluation, I mean, the lines of scrimmage were really tough to watch last night. They were tough to watch in Ireland. They were tough to watch against North Dakota. They've been tough to watch at different points in the Frost era. And, it just didn't work out, and it was time to move on. You got to rip the Band-Aid now versus hoping it would heal or that magical October 1st date. You can't let the fan base kind of drift. You get ahead of this thing, you figure out this week, and you move forward. And you feel bad and sad for a guy many of us watched, covered, and cheered for as a national championship quarterback.
Yeah, well, and a guy that was so ballyhooed coming in. I mean, it was probably, you're always going to have your detractors. I wouldn't say you can ever be 100% in unity between the fan base and the administration and the team. But if you achieve 80%, you're good, right? Like, it's solid. And 80% of folks were definitely okay with Frost becoming the next head coach. Of course, you had some detractors that were like, not sure he has enough experience, not sure this is going to be a great fit for him overall, not sure that style of offense will translate well to the Big Ten, et cetera. And I think right now, you have a situation where probably 80% of fans are like, yep, I get it. You'll have the 20% that are like, oh, how can you treat one of our own like that? Just give him a little bit more time. You signed him to such a long contract for a reason. But, I'm just, for what it's worth, I'm sitting here at a youth football game, some kids that I coach in baseball, and, it's a nice matter of the community here. And as the word started to travel, I didn't hear any detractors, right? As you're sitting in the stands, all the parents are like, yeah, okay, well, I wonder who they're going to get next. Who are they going to get next? I don't think people are struggling with this. Maybe not nearly to the degree that they were with, say, Pelini, not nearly to the degree that they were with Solich, right? Where that was probably a 50-50 proposition back then as to whether or not you thought either of those coaches should be let go. This is a situation that I think everybody's ready for, despite maybe how, I guess you put it, sad, and how you kind of feel bad for somebody that clearly wanted it to work, clearly was invested, clearly had some accolades. It all sounded great on paper. It all looked right. But man, it's easy to go, I guess, micro here and to talk about certain positions or certain drives or whatever. But I really do think last night kind of said a lot down the stretch where, look, if you're running the ball against those guys at will throughout the entire game, and you go back and look at that drive chart of when Nebraska went up with about 3.5 minutes left to go, that throw down to the 1 yard line cost Nebraska the game. Yes, you got the score. Yes, you got the score. Yes, you put yourself back up on top. Yes, you needed the pass, but a step back. Was that the best decision to make in terms of game management when your margin of error is so low, when it's always a one-possession game? No. You need to keep that thing on the ground because Georgia Southern had not stopped it. Not going to stop it. You chew clock, and you need to leave those dudes like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. But you left them free. You couldn't stop them, and now you're fired.
It came down, Mark. It came down to decision making, management. Mark,
right.
Try and reconnect with Mark if you can. Mark, we were losing you in and out. Let's bring in the pride of Fairbury, Bill Dolman, with us, part of the Nebraska football program for decades, and the host of the Tom Osborne Show. Bill, what's your take? Connor, we'll get your thoughts. Elijah, you as well, and we'll continue to go around the horn on this. We'll have live coverage of Nebraska's press conference at 3 today, and it's a special edition of Nebraska football coverage with ESPN Lincoln, KFOR, 96 Kicks. And you can also watch StreamYard or on Twitter with KFOR, ESPN Lincoln, 96 Kicks. Jeff Moats also joins us, and KFOR, KFORnow.com, and then the Real Red Reaction YouTube. Bill, you've been a part of Nebraska football for a long time, and your thoughts, what's the immediate reaction? My thought is I could see both ways, waiting till October 1st to save a buck, but can you really put a price tag on the emotion, the feeling of the fan base right now with still a lot of season left? Trev decided to make a move this morning and dismiss Scott Frost. Your reaction?
I'm not surprised. I'm sad. Having been around the program when Scott was Nebraska's quarterback and remembering just the excitement that we all felt 5 years ago when he got the job. And, really goes back beyond, prior to that when he was coming up as an assistant coach at Northern Iowa and then going to Oregon, and people saw what he was able to do. And then you look at his pedigree as a player in the NFL and the coaches that he had played for. And people were excited about Scott being Nebraska's head coach when he was the wide receivers coach with the Ducks. And then he got to be the offensive coordinator and did, well with those teams. So people have been talking about Scott and wanting Scott to be the head coach for a long, long time. And it finally happened, and I mentioned to you last night, what happens if Scott had turned down Nebraska 5 years ago? How devastating would that have been to this fan base? And how much would Nebraska's program have been lampooned then that the Nebraska football job, because of what was done to Frank Solich, what was done to Bo Pelini, like him or love him or whatever, but he got the job done on the field and his players loved him. You go through the Bill Callahan and the Mike Riley stuff and you just want to feel good. And then there's that moment when the guy that you have coveted for over a decade and loved throughout his life says yes. But if Scott had turned Nebraska down back in, 2017, Nebraska would have been a national laughingstock in a different way. Mm-hmm. Because it would have said Nebraska's program is in such shambles because of all that's happened over 15 plus years that even Scott Frost wouldn't take the job. Now who's going to take it? But instead, Nebraska got the guy that everybody in the country wanted. Florida State, Tennessee were all open, and Scott's name was up there with all of them. And he got the Nebraska job. He came home, and everybody here celebrated it. And everybody around the country, save for a few people who were quiet, but everybody thought this is the home run hire of all home run hires. It's a perfect fit. Everybody said that, even the detractors of Nebraska football. And now here we are 5 years later, and it didn't work. And I'm sad about it. But my thoughts go back to how the game transpired last night, but then watching fans leave the stadium was just something I'd never, granted, I worked a lot of games well into the night, never got to see that, but just watching them leave, like leaving a movie theater to a movie that wasn't all that good and nobody saying anything. And I thought last night that's about as bad as I've ever seen it, felt it. And I don't think it was there's apathy, but just this resignation that, hope is kind of gone unless something happens. And Trev had to make that move now.
So you're beyond anger right now with the fan base. It's now sadness because your own guy couldn't get it done. We'll get to some of your comments. And Will, just to be clear, and Motzi, we're on the air here with ESPN and KFOR.
Well, we will be joining up with KFOR shortly here. I did a cut-in briefly on KFOR just to get everything situated before I logged on to the StreamYard feed here, but we will get on KFOR here momentarily. And another reminder, once we get on to KFOR, we'll probably go with this feed until 2 o'clock, get into Chiefs pregame, and then roughly about 2:45, 2:50-ish in that time frame, we'll jump back in leading into the press conference coverage on KFOR. And we will carry the first part of that news conference on KFOR and then get you to kick off with the Chiefs and the Cardinals at about 3:25. Then, of course, there'll be wall-to-wall coverage on ESPN Lincoln as well.
Want to get to Cranack real quick. Cranak's being daddy and at a youth ball game. Mark, before we let you get back to Sunday youth sports, why do you think this didn't work?
That's such a layered question, I think the part of it where he maybe knew too much. He maybe knew too much about the differences and the way things were. And if you think about it, that the last time that he was actually around the program in any kind of significant way, things were different. And in terms of the things that he said in his opening press conference of what he wanted Nebraska to be about, I don't think he was wrong there. About having a more physical brand, working their tail off in the weight room more so than any other program, those kinds of things. Those kinds of hallmarks were truly what set Nebraska apart, on top of sprinkling in incredible athletes from some of the recruiting hotbeds. But the foundation was absolutely a hard work. We are going to work harder than you. And in Division I football, that's hard to do because everybody works hard, but they really did. Mm-hmm. And so I think he was about the right things. I don't think his actions always matched up, though. And I think he mishandled personnel significantly. Things like the Wandale Robinson situation, the flyer he took on Maurice Washington, the devotion that he had to Adrian Martinez, despite a lot of evidence to the contrary. I think he was right sort of philosophically and morally, ethically, to bring his entire staff. That's seemingly a good thing. That's a trait he learned from Osborne about coaching continuity, but I think we all saw that probably wasn't the right strategic decision to make for the betterment program. I think it's really what it is just kind of that conflict of like, he had seen what it had been and what it took. He tried to essentially copy and paste all of those things and use his a more modern offense with it. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't together, and they were more recruiting wise, and it just didn't quite pan out.
Mark Cranack joining us, Bill Dolman, Connor Clark, Elijah Herbal, Jeff Moats, Will Wilson. Reaction to the Frost firing. Cranack, we'll let you get on with your day. Thanks for your input. Going to bring Elijah in, and then Connor, your guys' quick take on what Mark had to say, and also to piggyback on Bill. Will, you also you grew up going to ball games, man. We have all done it, and it's kind of it's not shocking but sad, and we'll continue going around the horn. Elijah, you're muted.
Sorry, fixed it now. It's not a surprise to me this morning that this is it for Scott, and I think we closed the reaction show last night with me saying, whatever Trev decides to do, whether he decides to keep Frost around until October 1st and lower that buyout down to $7.5 million, or if he decides to get it out of the way now, whatever he decided to do, I do feel fully confident in what Trev has planned for this program and Trev's decision this morning. Because if there's anyone in this football program as a whole, this athletic department as a whole, that I still do have trust in, it's Trev Alberts. And my trust in Scott Frost was waning, not only over the past couple of years, but even over the past couple of weeks. Whenever you saw how he responded to things going the wrong way last season, how he changed things up and it still didn't have any different results on the field. And you can go to the micro with, well, the offense looked different. Mark Whipple's offense looked different. But at the end of the day, Nebraska still was not a physical force, which is what you need to be to succeed in the Big Ten. And Nebraska was still finding ways to lose close games. And whenever that continuously happens, it's a loser's mentality if you keep Scott Frost around any longer than he had to be here. And I think last night was not only the final nail in the coffin for fans, it was the final nail in the coffin for the athletic department in terms of a guy who did not know how to fix the mess that was the Husker football program right now. I mean, he got up in the post-game press conference and had a defeatist mentality of, as Connor said last night, I thought we'd perform better. And it's one of those almost arrogant statements that, well, just because it's Georgia Southern, you thought we'd perform better. what has shown you over the past couple of years that your team was going to go out there on Saturday and perform better? Because all we've seen over the past 4 years and 3 games is a team that, well, it was the best week of practice they've ever had, and then they show up on Saturday and lay an absolute egg. So it showed me last night with those post-game pressers comments that Scott Frost did not know what the issue was within his own program, and he did not know how to fix it. When that becomes the case, it was time for Trev to say, you know what, this season is not lost. We still have 9 games left. There is still a bowl game, which is a possibility for the Husker football team, and I know it doesn't feel like it after a loss like last night, but the first step in not only saving this program, but saving this season was to get the man at the top out, and I'll echo what everyone else said. I'm sad this didn't work out. I wanted this to work out more than anyone. And my feeling this morning whenever I saw the news was a feeling of sadness, but also a feeling of relief that, well, now Nebraska can move on, and Nebraska can move on to a new coach who has new ideas on how to fix this program, because somebody out there, this is not a program that is cursed. It's not dead in the water. With the fan support and the monetary support that this program has, there's always a future for Nebraska football. And now it's time to find that new coach who's going to lead you to greener pastures.
There he goes. Connor, a quick thought, Will, and then Bill will get back. No, sadness, it just never got done. And actions and words, that matching part, what was said by Kranak, I thought was pretty impressive, Connor.
Yeah, and I agree with Elijah, too. I mean, it was something that had to be done sooner rather than later. I was honestly a little surprised when I saw it today. I kind of thought that they would wait till the buyout period, but either way, I think at a certain point, enough is enough, and you have to do what's best for the program. And I trust Trev Alberts with what he's going to do, and whatever decision he decided to make, which was firing Scott Frost today, is the one that he was going to make. And I'm not going to sit here and say I have a problem with it. I think it was a warranted decision, whether to wait or not, and it's what's best for the program going forward. Now, going forward, who's going to step up? Now, obviously, Mickey Joseph's going to be the interim head coach. We'll see how that goes. And as Elijah said, there's still 9 games left in this season. And, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's very salvageable right now. 9 games is 9 games worth of opportunity. It's 9 games worth of 60 minutes of football to get better. And I think that's what this team needs. They need to take the step forward. They need to flush everything out that's gone on in the past. And this is a fresh start. Take that first step forward, keep it going. Yes, it would have been awesome if it worked out that the former national championship quarterback came back as a coach and led Nebraska back to relevancy. But the reality is that's not the card that we've been dealt here, and that's just how it's going to be.
Will, went from fairy tale to nightmare, didn't it?
It did, man. It was pretty quick from last night. You and I sitting on the stream, and here we are at 12. It had already happened. Back when he was hired, he was pretty much the home run hire. Everybody on national media was saying this is the guy to get. I believe all 6 of us were saying the same thing, and it's really disappointing to see how it came. This was supposed to be the year he went out and got new coaches, hit the transfer portal hard. It was supposed to work immediately, and I think we all can see these last few games that there's not much improvement from what we've seen. So it's sad, but hey, man, you got to do the job, and he didn't get the job done. Simple as that.
Bill, want to bring your thought in here, Moats, as well. Trev Alberts, Trev at UNO, now Trev in Lincoln, and expectation. Knowing administration like you do, Bill, knowing Trev like you do, what's this search? What's this process going to be like? And then how real a shot does Mickey have to be the guy? He's the interim, but can he prove himself this year to be a serious candidate? I mean, you have Pete Thamel that tweeted out his list. Matt Campbell, Mark Stoops, Dave Aranda, Bill O'Brien, Lance Leipold, Jim Leonard, PJ Fleck, no thank you. Chris Kleiman, Dave Doran, Sam Pittman, Alex Grinch, Matt Entz, Brett Bielema, Jamie Caldwell, Troy Calhoun, and Option Football, Bill Dolman.
Those are Pete Thamel's candidates?
Yes.
Is there anybody that he left out?
Well, no, no.
Look, look. When Trev got hired last year, I thought that was a great hire. What Nebraska will have is a professional, thorough, principled search. I don't think it's going to be done. I think whoever Trev meets with will be people of integrity. And there are some people on that list that you just named that I know. I've been around. Don't laugh off Troy Calhoun. I'm not saying he's the guy, but Troy was an offensive coordinator in the NFL. He runs the option because that's what Air Force does. But there are a lot of good coaches who are out there. I think that any coach who wants the job is going to meet with Trev and understand that he's the boss. That this is not going to be Sean Eichhorst, Steve Peterson, and the like being the athletic director at Nebraska, where the football coach is going to come in and think I can run this program however I want. I can do whatever I want. That ain't going to happen. And some of those guys amongst that list that you named will think I can do whatever I want. And then they're going to find out, no, I'm not going to be the boss. I'm going to have a lot of control over my football program, but I'm not going to be the boss. So again, professional, principled, done with integrity. It's going to be somebody, I believe, that Trev is probably very similar in personality to Trev Alberts, to Coach Osborne, to Coach Solich, and others that we've had here. I just think that's just the way who's Trev is. Trev's going to want somebody that he can work with. And the thing that Nebraska is doing is what USC did a year ago. They fired Clay Helton, who just won here last night. They fired Clay Helton, 4, 5, 6 games into last season, right?
He was 1-1, and then they popped him, and then it was Lincoln. How do you like oceanfront property, baby?
Exactly. My point is that USC made the decision, they made the firing, and they went out and they found the guy. And I'll bet they maybe identified 2 or 3 candidates, maybe one, for the entire season, went through negotiations, and when that Big 12 championship game or whatever Lincoln Riley's last game was, when it was over, that's when the hire was made. Because remember, Lincoln Riley was going to be going to LSU according to everybody else. He was going to be the next head coach at LSU. And an hour after they lose their game in the Big 12 championship game, he's the next head coach at USC. That just didn't happen in the fourth quarter with USC texting him on the sideline saying, hey, would you be interested? No way that happened. All that groundwork was laid weeks and months before. I'm not saying that Nebraska has their next head coach right now, but I would bet that Trev, much differently than Steve Peterson, the 4-year case of the flu, that Trev has in mind who he wants. Because look, this deal with the buyout in October 1 was made a year ago. So he had to start looking ahead. If this isn't going to work, I need to have a plan in place. So I would think that there's 1 or 2 or 3 candidates right now that Trev is saying, this is where we're going to go. And we're going to get a head start on everybody else. And when the season ends and the time is right, we're moving. And it could be any of those guys on that list.
A name I love on that list, and I know you got the perception part of this, Motzi and Elijah and Connor and Bill, and
just say,
go ahead.
That I know where you're going to go with this perception. And before you lay out the name you like, and it's not going to be the sexiest name, I have a feeling you're going to say that. Look at what's happening with Sam Pittman at Arkansas. 3 years ago, everyone saw Sam Pittman to Arkansas, and they said, well, that's not a great hire. What's Arkansas doing behind the scenes here? But the thing is just because a coach is great at USC does not mean a coach is going to be great at Arkansas or what have you. There's different factors around programs, and just because the fans don't think it's a great hire, just because the national media doesn't think it's a great hire, doesn't mean it's going to work out. And that's why I think what's happening behind the scenes here with Trev Alberts is some of the most important developments that's going to happen with Nebraska football and has happened with Nebraska football in the last, 30 years since Tom Osborne stepped down, just in terms of where the program is at.
Well, it's got to get flipped. I mean, I love Lance Leipold. I think what he's done at Kansas is, last night, I know West Virginia does not have Major Harris playing for him anymore, but the point is you had your 2-touchdown dog, and you go in there. You have probably the combined offensive line makeup of KU football a year ago wasn't 5 stars. You had all the stars up, left tackle to right tackle, wasn't 5 stars. What'd they do? They go in and whack Texas because he just you got to get a developer. You got to get a guy who's physical. You got to get a throwback Ted Carter with a statement about 7 minutes ago, and I'm going to read this to you guys. And Motzi, jump in here with a name you like for the next coach. We're grateful for everything Scott Frost has done for the University of Nebraska and the Huskers as a player, coach, and leader of young men. Unfortunately, the results on the field just aren't there. Nebraskans expect us to compete for championships, as do I. We had all hoped to see our program move in the right direction, but with Oklahoma and Big Ten play still ahead of us, it's clear we need to make a change. Difficult as the decision is, I fully support A.D. Albert's path forward, and I have complete confidence in interim coach Joseph. There's a lot of football left to be played. Now is the time to really rally around our players and give them full support. All of us at the University of Nebraska wish Coach Frost and his family the very best. We look forward to continuing to cheer on our Huskers. So thanks for everything. Appreciate you. Isn't getting done. Time to move on. Motzi, if you're picking, who do you like next?
You mentioned Calhoun. That's a name I think that to me kind of stands out, especially if you want to have an offense that's heavily ground oriented, if you will. But, at the same time, if Mickey Joseph turns things around here in the next month or so and Nebraska becomes bowl eligible, let's just say for the sake of argument, why not consider him as a possible candidate? I mean, Nebraska is not at the stage where it was 25 years ago when Tom Osborne stepped down. It was at the very top of the mountain. And then when Frank Solich was let go in 2003 and Bill Callahan was brought in, at that time, Nebraska was still a very, very hot coaching job to get. Here we are in 2022. We're not seeing Nebraska necessarily as a basement dweller type of job.
It's been thrown down the stairs, though.
Right. But it's almost becoming a starting point job for an up-and-coming coach. And Scott Frost was that up-and-coming coach. He was at UCF. He had a great 2-year run there. I think all of us thought, coming to Lincoln, coming back home, he could probably bring that same type of magic that he had down in Orlando to Lincoln. And it was just a complete flop from the get-go. It was not going to take off. You thought year one, yeah, it's going to be rough. Okay, they were 0-6 until they got their first win of the season in 2018. And since then, COVID didn't necessarily help things out with trying to build up momentum in the program. So I would say if not somebody that's already well known, and you have somebody like Mickey Joseph come in, and let's say they go out Saturday and they surprise and shock the world and they upset Oklahoma and they win another 3-4 games and maybe get that 6th win, become bowl eligible, why not consider Mickey Joseph? I think his time is coming.
Mickey's an incredible recruiter. He's a big-time developer. Bill, he's been a guy that, let's say Mickey Joseph, and here come the hounds.
Roz and
Gertie, right? They're thundering forward. Yes. I think it could work, but you've got proven winners at high levels out there. Bill, tell me about the sell job that Trev's got to embark on for the next. Maybe it works out with Mickey. Roz, get down. It's my cookie. She just ate my cookie. Well, there's chocolate in there, so good luck with that, dog. But how hard to sell is the Nebraska job to candidates? Because there's that argument. There's the recruiting base, and I want your perspective on it. I think in-state recruiting and talent's on a monster uptick, where the rest of the country's coming into Nebraska, right? Malachi Coleman tweeted this morning, wow, he's the number one in-state kid on Nebraska's board. I think it could work with Mickey, but do you have a chance at Matt Campbell, who's currently employed, Leopold, currently employed, Calhoun? let's play this out here with the pros and cons of Nebraska, where the take was 5 years ago, if Scott can't get it done, it ain't going to get done.
Coaches, any coach that's worth his ability in his chosen profession is going to want a challenge. Clay Helton proved that last night. Clay Helton gets whacked by USC. His reputation is somewhat in a tatters because he'd been kind of kicked around for more than a year, was on a hot seat at USC for a while, searches for a job, finds a school in southeastern Georgia that says, come on. And he says, okay, I'm up for it. And he's got 2 wins and one over, one of the greatest programs in college football history. Not one of the greatest teams right now, but still one of the greatest teams in a power conference that's going into the next era of the Big Ten with all the money that's coming in and the Taj Mahal that's being built between the stadium and the Coliseum. The facilities are there. Nebraska still had a full house last night. That wasn't a doctored number. There were over 80,000 people at the stadium last night after what had transpired against North Dakota. And they'll be there again on Saturday to support Mickey and to watch the Oklahoma game. I think this will get the fans back into it. And any coach who wants to coach and have a challenge and prove that he can get the job done will want this job. And there's still something special about Nebraska. And they've been saying since some Irishmen wandered in from Wyoming that you can't win at Nebraska because of its geographic location. Last I checked, Nebraska hasn't moved. Last I checked, they hired a professorial, pastoral doctor of educational psychology who was in his early 30s who did okay over 25 years. People who want the challenge and can get the job done and can work with people will get the job done here. And you're going to have all the support you could ever possibly want. I said this the other day, and I'm not saying Pat Fitzgerald's getting the job, but if you're Pat Fitzgerald, you've done a great job at Northwestern, highs and lows, 9-3, 3-9, 9-3. What doesn't matter what you do, you can still hear the bottle of schnapps get tipped over in the stadium, right?
Unless you're going cheap, at least you're going cheap, and it's plastic, but you hear it bounce. I know what you're saying.
Right. Same thing as some of those games at the Nebraska's playing Rutgers on a Friday night. Why? Because nobody's going to be there on a Friday or a Saturday. They're just trying to figure out ways to get people in the stadium to possibly care. Nebraska's played at Purdue, and it has been tumbleweeds going through the stadium. Nebraska has 86,000 to 95,000 people when things aren't going that well. And a coach is going to want to have the support. The players are going to want to play in front of those kinds of fans. You've got every luxury you could possibly have. Maybe we're not making Caleb Williams money in NIL in Los Angeles, but not everybody on that team is either out at USC. Nebraska is still Nebraska. It is still a brand. And when the coach gets fired, it's national news. Nobody's talking about what's going on at Arizona State right now, or the fact that Washington State, who beat Wisconsin yesterday, might be in the Mountain West along with Oregon State. Nobody's talking about some of the other tumultuous things going on, but Nebraska gets clicks. It gets opinions. It generates interest. It puts people on TV. There'll be a lot of people watching on Saturday because they're going to be interested to see how Mickey Joseph does as in his first job as a Division I head coach. It's still Nebraska. It is a job that people are going to want. They're going to want that challenge. And some of it might be a veteran coach. And again, I'm not endorsing Troy, although I love him at Air Force. Pat Fitzgerald, Lance Leipold, all these names that are out there. They might look at it and go, you know what? I can do it. I can get my guys, and we're going to go there, and we can get it done. And I firmly believe that Trev is going to go into every meeting principled with integrity. I'm the boss. I'm bringing you on. We're going to do this as a team because it's Nebraska and it's important, and the fans deserve it, and the players in the locker room deserve it. And if it's Mickey at the end, great. Mickey can be the head coach now, and you've got Ron Brown who's coached wide receivers on staff. You've got people around you already who are good people that could help him do a good job in the next 9 games.
Yeah, as you said, he has a 9-game tryout here to be Nebraska's new head coach. We're talking about candidates, throwing those out there now, and I'm sure Trev Alberts has a list in the top drawer of his desk right now that he was waiting to pull out for when this day came. And I'm sure he's going to be doing work behind the scenes on that right now. But let's not forget the fact that Mickey Joseph does, in fact, have a 9-game tryout to be Nebraska's head coach moving forward. And I don't think that it's a shot in the dark that Mickey could be your guy moving forward. With his pedigree, do I venture to say that this has been in the works for a while in Trev's mind that, yeah, Mickey is going to get a 9-game tryout? Because we could all see the writing in the wall moving into this season with that October 1st buyout date. We were hoping for the best, but we knew that was in the back of our minds at all times. And I think when that hire was made, Trev had it in the back of his mind that, you know what, once this move is made, we're going to give Mickey Joseph his tryout to be Nebraska's next head coach. Because if you have a top 3, top 5 list of guys that you're preparing, I think Mickey Joseph is definitely within that top 5.
I and again, going back to what I said earlier, I think it'd be a wise decision to have him on your list to be considered, and that 9-game tryout. And as I told the executive club here in Lincoln a few weeks back, I think, optimistically speaking, for Nebraska, and at the time I said in order for Scott Frost to maintain his job as 6 wins and a bowl bid, then you make the more, progression forward to go for 7, 8, 9 wins and build off of that. I think with Mickey Joseph, if he can accomplish that this year, why not? Again, if he can rally these guys back from losing their head coach early on in the season and getting ready for one of the biggest games of the season that they have with Oklahoma this coming Saturday, if he can go from there and they compete and they pull out a win and they win a few more games to get 6 wins at least to become bowl eligible, why not offer it to him? Give him a chance, make a short-term deal. And if he can accomplish something in the next 2 years to where Nebraska can be back at that national level of competition, with some of the big teams in the power conferences, then you expand on that. So I don't see a problem with that at all with Mickey Joseph whatsoever.
Let me throw 2 more cents in about Mickey. And I said this when Brian Kelly got the job at LSU and went down there and started throwing out a fake accent, right? Mickey Joseph.
Mickey's real.
Right. This is not to say that not every other coach in the country hasn't gone through the ranks to get to where they are. Okay. But when Mickey goes to talk to a high school coach anywhere down south, especially, but maybe around Nebraska or in the 500-mile radius, I've coached high school ball. I've coached at the lowest levels of college football. I've been an assistant coach at the low levels. I've been a head coach at the lower levels. I worked my way into an assistant job at LSU. I've produced NFL #1 draft picks and all pros and Super Bowl champions, and I've been a part of a team that will go down as one of the greatest in college football history. I have paid my dues. So when he goes to sit in a living room to talk to mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa, when he goes to talk to high school, and he hires people like that who have done the hard work to get where they are, coaches respect that when they know that you can speak their language in terms of having to deal with high school kids, no budgets, having to do all the hard, dirty work to, just to make your program complete. Mickey has earned that kind of respect in his climb up the ladder to get to where he is. And coaches will respect that and will listen to him when he says, we'd like to have one of your players come play at perhaps the University of Nebraska or wherever he goes next. So that's what I really respect about him. And I think a lot of other people do, is that he has paid his dues to get here.
Yeah, some footage right now from our friend Kevin Suits 1011, as it's out there on Twitter, and I retweeted it at Schmidt_radio. Scott Frost leaving his office at Memorial Stadium, hugging a couple of folks within the program as he gets into to his truck and takes off. So there's the human element to this. I'm going to circle back to that part of it with Nebraska fans, as we have hundreds of reactions with this news today. Scott Frost dismissed from Nebraska 3 games into the 2022 season. Press conference coming up with Trev Alberts at 3:00, and we'll have full coverage of that. We are streaming here on ESPN Lincoln, on Hail Varsity's Twitter, as well as KFOR's Twitter, Facebook Live with KFOR, with 96 Kicks, and with ESPN. Also can watch this live on YouTube with the Real Red Reaction. So plenty of ways to get it on socials and, of course, on the air with ESPN Lincoln and KFOR FM 103.3 1240 AM. So we're reacting. Last night was very raw with the reaction because last night was your breaking point for many of you. Mm-hmm. Last night was Trev Albert's breaking point. Last night was J.D. Carter's breaking point. And it's a situation where he just didn't want it to be like this. But this is having to say goodbye to one of your own that was supposed to come back and fix it because he was one of your own. He knew how the sausage was made to make the brat taste great, right? He was a part of it. And if we're going to get into the why for 2 seconds, it just came down to this level of job. Now, everybody in college football thought he was ready for a Power 5 SEC Big Ten level of job. And from an offensive play standpoint, he probably was. But from a management standpoint and from a standpoint of being able to delegate or be organized as a CEO, that some people are better at it than others, man. I mean, I'm certainly not personally, I'm not awesome at the I's and the T's. I'm okay, but you ask my family, I'm a slob. You know,
your dog just ate a chocolate chip cookie for God's sake.
Well, and it's one of those that, like, you know, it's a 7-pound chocolate chip cookie. So the point of the story is this: one of you guys, Elijah, Connor, Motzi, Dolman, pick me a winner for the NFL so I can at least cover the vet bill. Okay.
Certainly not the Bears right now.
Definitely not the Bears.
Based on the first quarter, Zach Taylor might be a candidate. You know, they look awful in the first quarter anyway.
Man. But the emotional part, the sadness we've all touched on because you wanted to work for one of your own. But there's an anger and a frustration too, guys, with the Nebraska fan base because the talent's been here, right? We talk about development and evaluation on the lines of scrimmage. Nebraska's had good players. You talk to former players, and they're like, dude, it's not a talent issue. It's a situation where the Nebraska's underachieved, Bill, and we'll start there and go around the horn. But it didn't get done, and that's a sad statement, but there's a lot of runway given to Scott to get it flipped around. And there's different parts of when people lost faith, I guess. And last night was the final straw with that.
Well, you know, last night I was scratching my head with the some of the play calling because he's brought in this new offensive brain trust, and I guess it should be past tense. He brought in this, you know, new offensive group of coaches, but all the plays were to Anthony Grant, and a lot of wide receivers got involved in the passing game, and Casey Thompson looked really good as a quarterback. But in terms of development, you know, Ramir Johnson doesn't come in until the very end of the game, and he was supposed to be this kind of new wave slot back receiver guy that was a hybrid that was going to, you know, do a little bit of everything, and he hasn't developed this. And there was this stable of 6 running backs, but yet you only have 1 and a true freshman. You know, so I'm wondering where offensively was the change, you know, and not really dig something up. But I remember back when Frank was coaching, and all he had offensively really was Jamal Lord. And on 3rd down and 8, you knew that Jamal Lord was going to run a quarterback draw because he was the best running back. You know, but it was predictable. And Nebraska's offense, really the last couple of games, has been pretty predictable. You know, Grant, Allen, throw the ball to Washington or Palmer, and you know, you lose Vokalek. That certainly hurt. But in terms of just a complete changeover, where you go, man, this really did make a lot of sense. I just did not see that. And who's calling plays? It certainly doesn't matter now. But Mitch Sherman had a column in the Athletic that didn't matter last week either.
The numbers here are this. And Will, are we able to take phone calls as well? Yeah. You want to chime in, you're welcome to do it. 466-3776, 489-1240, or 1-800-825-5865. Connor, you wanted to say something?
Well, you bring up it's not a talent issue, and that's probably been the most frustrating part of this entire thing for me personally. And I know it's probably the same with a lot of Husker fans. It's the lack of, okay, you're given the resources. We talked about this last night too on the reaction show about how Nebraska has all these resources. Well, to go into that pool of resources is the players, and the fact that now you kind of have to take recruiting rankings, at least from the past 5 years or so, with a grain of salt, is really, really frustrating as a fan and as somebody who covers the team as well. It's why are you bringing this group together if you can't even put it out on the field correctly? To me, that's one of the more frustrating parts of this entire tenure. Hopefully that can get changed. And back to Motzi's point too, why not Mickey Joseph as a candidate, especially if he does get the guys to buy in? Maybe if it's, and I don't know, maybe this is pushing it too far, but if it's 5 and 7 at the end of the day, but he gets the guys to buy in completely, what's the conversation there? I think that could be really interesting.
Hey guys, we have
a text in.
Go ahead,
really
Will.
quick, we had
Elijah first. Go ahead. Sorry.
Elijah. Go ahead, Elijah.
Yeah, we had a text in from Brennan who's been commenting in and sent me a text in. Mickey Joseph and Vance Joseph, Bo and Carl 2.0. Just thought I'd throw that out there. That was a funny comment.
Line. Let's start with Lance. Here's Lance on the line.
Lance, thanks for chiming in. Go ahead. Lance, do you have us?
I can hear him. I can hear his phone.
Nope.
All right.
Have him call back.
All right. We also got Jake.
Jake, go ahead. Welcome into our Frost coverage. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, my question is, why couldn't we wait the 7.5 days to save money that we could have saved doing it October 1st?
Do you want to have Frost, knowing he's going to be gone October 1st, do a perp walk out for Oklahoma? I mean, the program's been embarrassed. Trev had seen enough.
You think you're going to
Time to
do
move on. I can't hear you. One more time for me, Jake. I can't hear you, bud.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can hear him loud and clear over here. I think there's just kind of a connection issue between the stream and our phone calls. So, but yeah, that was his question: is why couldn't we just wait for 7 days?
And I'll add to Schmitty's point here and just say it's the message that you're broadcasting not only to the fans of Nebraska but also college football fans across the country and prospective candidates that you are fine with worse than mediocrity at this Husker football program. If you lose to a team like Georgia Southern after 4 years of terrible results, and you say, you know what, we're going to give you 3 more weeks, it's broadcasting to the world that this is a result that you are okay with. Now, I know we know that this is not something Nebraska's okay with, but it's that image that you're projecting out that, you know what, by the fact of keeping Scott Frost around, we're fine with the results here. We're fine with you losing to Georgia Southern. And the simple fact of the matter is that is well below the standard of Nebraska. And by keeping him around post today, that's the message you would be sending out to everybody.
Bill, as the CEO role was kind of pitched to Scott or suggested, I look at Trev and I really think Trev wanted to help mentor Scott in that role, but enough was enough with it. And, you know, to Elijah's point, it is what's acceptable. And last night was not. The first 3 games this season were not for Trev and Nebraska fans. And quite frankly, a lot of his tenure here has not been acceptable when you look at the win-loss and the one-score games. It's been, you know, that horse has been dead for a while, but it's a reality. And you've got to be good in pressure situations, at least be 500. You can't be double digits below 500 in one-score games in a one-score league.
You know, I think Trev probably got a real sense, like I did, watching the fans leave the stadium, and to make Nebraska fans have to speculate for another 3 weeks. It takes me back to when Steve Peterson made the decision with Frank Solich for so long. People are like, well, the guy to make the decision is Steve. The guy to make the decision is Steve, and he left us twisting for 40 days before we saw the plane in Arkansas with Houston not on it, not on it. And I think, I don't, Trev wasn't around, but I'm thinking he just didn't want people to be twisting around for another 21 days going, what's going to happen? Are we waiting? Everybody's targeting. I got a million texts, people targeting October 1st and 2nd. And I think Trev just got that sense from the fans yesterday and last night, like I did, that I just can't do that to these people who have been so loyal for 40 years and had so much hope 5 years ago and 5 days ago and 5 minutes ago, and the field goal's no good. And I also, maybe it will be divulged at 3:00. Do we really know what that final package is going to be? We got, because look, they had that little press conference last year where they acknowledged some, violations. And Trev, I thought in that moment, put his stamp on the boss. And this is my football coach. And we're going to confront this head on. And we're going to acknowledge it. And then we're going to go back to business. Mm-hmm. And then the restructuring and all this stuff. And, people wanting to look at every dotted I and crossed T in the contract. And, Nebraska, for the most part, has kept the details, I think, pretty close to the vest. And I think that, they played whatever legal card they could. So is it black and white? Maybe it is. Maybe there's more to it in terms of how they went their separate ways this morning. Maybe the details will be fully divulged at 3:00, and maybe we've asked Scott to move on, and now we're moving forward, and that might be it. I don't know. I don't anticipate that Trev is going to be necessarily entirely open book, but I think all of this, everything was taken into consideration. A knee-jerk reaction probably would have been to have done it last night, but he knew it was going to have to be done at some point.
Or last year. I mean, he gave him last season. I mean, anyone else but one of your air quote own doesn't make it past last season. Let's try and get Mike on the horn. Mike, welcome into our reaction with the Frost firing. Go ahead.
You got to kind of try to go big and at least call Stoops, don't you?
You think Bobby will come back?
Boy, it's worth a shot.
I think it's no. I don't disagree with that. Big game Bob's pushing 60. His boys playing for Oklahoma. Is it Reed, the old slot receiver? I think you can make that phone call, but I think he's turned down gigs. He's had NFL opportunity, and he walked away and handed it off to Lincoln, and he wouldn't come back for Oklahoma. Bob, I love the take. I love the name, but I just don't think Stoops has already said no to things closer to his heart, be it the Browns or the Sooners to come back after Lincoln Riley. To go to Nebraska, it'd be one hell of a coup, I'll tell you that.
Well, and Schmitty, you mentioned the fact that maybe Trev will make that phone call. I don't think Trev even has to make a phone call. You just got to wait till next Saturday. Won't Stoops be in town for the game next week?
Well, yeah, because his son's playing. Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I think Bob Stoops, it's a nice person to look at in terms of a guy that can come in and rebuild a program. Remember, 25 years ago, Oklahoma was in dire straits with one of their former players as a head coach in John Blake. And here comes Bob Stoops, who was an offshoot of the Bill Snyder staff at Kansas State. And what's he doing his first year? Oklahoma goes 7-5, and then second year, they're national champions. Big game Bob, at that point. But I think with him right now, I think he's just enjoying life, golfing, watching his son play at Oklahoma. I don't think he's in a rush at any point to really get back into the coaching game. And I don't know if Nebraska be the one for him to even consider? I think he's looking at bigger and better things if he does get back into the coaching realm. Really quick, I want to point out a programming note for those of you listening on KFOR. We are going to carry the complete coverage of the Chiefs pregame and game. We will not carry the presser. We will have the presser on ESPN Lincoln at 3. We will not have it on KFOR. So we're going to go to Chiefs programming right now here in just a few minutes.
All right, Motzi, thanks again. I am going to be at the press conference. I'll probably see Bill down there. We'll be able to bring you reports live from the press conference and then post press conference thoughts as that is part of it. Reaction to Scott Frost being let go today by Trev Alberts. The news came down about right around high noon. And we're streaming live on Hail Varsity. Big thanks to Hail Varsity for streaming this with their audience on Twitter. ESPN Lincoln, KFOR, and KFOR's Facebook, along with ESPN Lincoln's Facebook, 96 Kicks' Facebook, and the Real Red ESPN Lincoln Twitter. Check that YouTube page. So I got it all covered. But continuing coverage will lead you up to the press conference at 3, and we've had plenty of names. Let's get to the team. Okay. What's the team do reaction-wise? First, we'll take a phone call from Will, and then we'll get your thoughts, Elijah, Connor, and Bill, and Motzi. Will, who's with us, bud?
We got Jeff on the line here.
Jeff, welcome in. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Smitty. I just had a comment on the timing. Fox is bringing in the big road show this weekend, and without this announcement, there would be no relevance to that game, honestly. So now
that's fair.
The game's relevant, and people will pay attention and be curious. So that's all I had. Thanks.
No, very, very fair point. At least there's, new. The conversation's been changed when it comes to the leadership standpoint of it, guys, which is had to be done based on the feelings and results. And now it's Mickey's got his opportunity. The storyline is Mickey was battled for by Osborne and Switzer to be the option quarterback of the 80s, the number one option quarterback in the world. And now you fast forward here, 2 rivals reunite, and a guy who's got a great history of first-round ball players, be it a 3-star or 5-star. He's done that at LSU. And you can drum up a little more interest versus whatever the fellas in the desert are going to make this line at. Nebraska barely winning 1 game and then not covering a couple of other big numbers here. Elijah, players, how do you think they'll handle this week?
I think we have a phone call on the line. I believe we have a phone call on the line from Will.
Okay, Will, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see that.
It's okay. We got Austin on the line here.
All right. Austin, thanks for joining us here on Hail Varsity at ESPN.
Yeah, I constantly hear we have enough talent, but we don't ever have any draft picks. Austin Allen was our best player last year. He didn't make a roster in the NFL.
He's with the Giants.
I don't really remember the glory days, but we used to have Amir, Rex, Roy Halou. We consistently have NFL talent making rosters, and I think our streak of draft picks every year ended within the Scott Frost or Mike Riley era. So I genuinely don't think we have the talent to compete with Ohio State and Wisconsin and Iowa.
I think it's been more coaching than lack of talent, Austin. The NFL draft picks that's some evidence, but you've got guys that get a shot or go to the league from this last era. And quite honestly, all those guys have been dudes that Riley recruited that you inherited if you're Scott.
Yeah.
So you still had them on your roster. I mean, JoJo and Hymus and homeboy from South Dakota. Help me out here. Can I buy a vowel?
Farniok.
Yeah, Farniok, Luke Gifford. So, yeah, I mean, you've had guys on the roster. Ozigbo was in a camp and has been on rosters or at least practice squads. So you've had some talent here, and it's just never aligned, Austin, with what your recruiting rankings are versus your end of season rankings. You just haven't found a way to get this talent developed.
One question I could ask you and let you guys talk about it. Do you think our new coach needs to be from somewhere that doesn't have a recruiting hotbed where it is, like somebody like Matt Campbell, Iowa State? I don't know if that affected Scott being used to being in Florida when he came here, and he could recruit right outside the university. We need a coach in the future that kind of is from a smaller place.
Hey, thanks for phone calling us, and appreciate the questions. And you got to get a developer. Bill, Elijah, Motzi, Connor, Will. It's got to be a developer. It's got a guy. You got to be able to go get a dude that can ball, right? Be it in the portal, like a Grant, he's a great ball player. You didn't recruit him out of high school, but man, you found him, and you're going to have a 1,000-yard rusher this year. That's incredible. But you got to go find a guy that can go get talent that's ready-made. But if it ain't ready-made, he's got to be able to develop it and then reload it. It's not out of the realm of possibility you have a down year, but what's your down year turn into? Is it 7-5 versus 3-9? That's your difference.
You also have to go ahead.
No.
I'll just say, you also have to have a guy that understands how you win in the Big Ten, because that was the big problem with Scott Frost through, I was going to say his first 4 years, but really his entire tenure was you win in the Big Ten by playing fundamental football. That means being strong at the point of attack on the lines of scrimmage. That means having special teams that can set you up in a position to pin a defense deep, knock home your field goal, get the 3 points, because that 3 points could be big moving forward. A team that tackles well. This is how you win in the Big Ten. It's a similar story to how you win in the SEC. And I think you need a guy that is proven in one of those two places. And isn't this guy? I mean, I look back at the 4 years of Scott Frost, and who are the big name recruits that they're pulling in? It's guys like Wandale Robinson, guys like Maurice Washington. These guys that, this would be a great pickup in the Pac-12. It'd be a great pickup in the Big 12. But it's not a great pickup in the Big Ten if you don't have a line of scrimmage that can open up holes for them, because that is how you win in the Big Ten. It's how Northwestern does it. The Northwestern's running backs every single year make you go, wow, that dude's an athlete. That dude's going to be great in the NFL. No, how they win is they have solid lines of scrimmage and they play fundamental football. And it's the same story with Iowa. It's the same story with Wisconsin. It's how Michigan State made that big jump last year. Is they had big lines of scrimmage that opened up holes for Kenneth Walker. It's how Michigan got it done last season. That is how you win in the Big Ten. And Nebraska needs to find a coach that not only understands that, but is proven in a place like the Big Ten or the SEC in order to make this rebuild less painful. You need to have a guy that understands you win football games in the Big Ten, not by winning recruiting battles for the likes of Wandale Robinson or Maurice Washington or anything like this, but you win recruiting battles against schools like Wisconsin and Iowa for offensive linemen who may not be the sexiest names out there, but they're the ones that are going to be winning you football games.
Yeah, would you rather have a coach who's corny and Corvallis or Youngstown tough? And
give me Youngstown tough,
right?
Without,
in the Big, yeah,
without
in the
the
Big
fear
10,
of violence.
right? In the Big Ten, that's what you need, and that's a Stoops or it's a Pelini or whatever. But you get what I'm saying, and Elijah's right. You've got to find those guys that are tough enough when they get in the trenches and not great looking when they get off the bus. Now Nebraska had that back in the day when they developed players in the weight room and on the training or in the training table and on the practice field. And I've mentioned it many times on the show. They would have the 4 stations of workouts, and I can remember guys coming back from the NFL and they'd come up to Husker Vision or whatever and talk about, man, when I was at Nebraska, I was getting 70 to 100 snaps a day in practice. And in the NFL, I might get 17 because everything's about, Sunday and you don't want to break your commodities and all that. Not that they're not tough in college football, but, guys were working out and practicing, and it didn't matter where you are on the depth chart. You were getting all of those reps in and you were developing as a player, whether you were a 1-star from Wichita Falls or a guy who was going to walk on to a junior college in Indiana who becomes a couple-time All-American and plays 7 years in the NFL. Nebraska developed players, and what's the old adage? You don't want to know how to do 10,000 things one time. It's best to do one thing 10,000 times. And that's what Nebraska did over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in practice. And so by the time you got to the games, and you had ones and ones going at it in practice, not the Oklahoma drill, but you had guys that were hitting and playing hard, so that Saturday was the easier day. It was the fun day. Everything that you've been working toward, you could now implement because you knew exactly what you needed to do if you were first team, second team, third team, or a walk-on from Wahoo getting your first career start on the rain in Manhattan, Kansas, and you knew what to do because you had worked on it and you were developed enough to get the job done, and everybody around trusted that you could do it too. That's something that Jay Foreman and I talked about last night on the post-game show. Nebraska would develop players which developed consistency, which developed chemistry, which developed efficiency and excellence, and then you trust. And when you trust the players around you to make the plays that you know they can make, then you can go make the play and do what you need to go do. And Nebraska, with 44 newcomers and 110 players out of 150 on the roster right now, are freshmen, sophomores, or redshirt freshmen. There's no continuity, there's no chemistry, and there's no trust. And that's evident that they don't know who's going to make a play, and they're not developed to make the plays and know what they're supposed to do.
That's Bill Dolman, Elijah Herbal, Jeff Moats, Connor Clark, Will Wilson. More phone calls, 466-3776 is our continuing coverage on ESPN Lincoln with Hail Varsity, with KFOR, with 96 Kicks, with Real Red Reaction, Chris Schmidt with you. Sad day for Nebraska football with Scott Frost being dismissed. A new hope with Mickey Joseph as interim coach. Trev Alberts will speak to you, the Nebraska fan, at 3 o'clock. Guys, keep it on rolling. I am going to head down and buy this Labradoodle more chocolate chip cookies. And I will check in down there on site here in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. All right?
Well, get cookies and paper towels then.
Yeah.
I'll just leave the gate open. We'll see you guys shortly.
All righty. Thanks, Schmitty.
Thanks, Schmitty.
Hey, Bill, back to your point about, the prep work and the training that Nebraska did for so many years, especially under the Osborne era. You look back and one key component that they had to all that success was the strength coach and Boyd Epley. And now you don't have that necessarily that central figure point in the weight room. I think you got maybe 2 or 3 other people that are sharing that role, but you don't have that. And you saw these walk-ons that were developed and they earned scholarships and they later became All-Americans and went on to be drafted in the NFL. I was seeing a Penn State Nebraska game from 79, and Derry Nelson, you remember Derry Nelson, and he went on to have a very good college career, and he played 7-8 seasons in the NFL, mostly for the Chargers. That's a prime example of player development. Whereas now, and granted today it's 2022 with NIL and the transfer portal, it's a totally different ball game than what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, part of it is generational. So as much as we like to look back, and people will knock me around every now and then when I continue to reminisce about the old days, but damn it, I was there, and that's what I know, and that's what I know worked. But I think back in that day when you had guys who came into the program and they were part of what was going on in the strength and conditioning program, and they redshirted, but they put the blood, sweat, and tears into it, that they were going to stick around to make sure that it paid off when they got the opportunity, because they know they might get that opportunity. Tom and his staff, they treated everybody the same way. So when they said, if you work hard, you're going to get a chance. And they believed it because it happened. You might get a guy, Tom and those guys, they never care about star rankings and whatnot. You wanted to get, somebody who was really good, like a Tommy or a Mickey was highly ranked and all that. But if you could find, and Jared Tomich is one of my favorite Huskers of all time, because his story is so compelling. St. John's, Indiana. Dad's like a steel worker. He's kind of a steel worker. And it was for him, it was either go work in the steel mills in St. John, Indiana, or go walk on to a junior college. And then there's somebody I think came out of the Boyd Epley strength coaching pipeline, was working in that area, tells Charlie McBride, you ought to take a look at this kid. He's really, really tough, and he's a hard worker. And he might walk on at Purdue or go to a junior college or something, but you ought to take a look at him. Comes into the program at a great time with Grant and the Peter brothers and all that, but he worked hard. and he worked hard in the weight room, and he got his reps, and he was tougher than hell. And the next thing you know, the guy's an All-American, and he's playing in the NFL. But he developed his and when you work that hard, you put the pride in yourself and into the program, and you've basically invested yourself into it, and you want to see it pay off here. And for so many people in this generation, if it doesn't work out for me now, well, I'm going to go someplace else where I might get a shot. And I even see players that are in a program, maybe 2 or 3 different programs in their career, and they think they're all going to go to the league, and it just doesn't happen. But, Boyd had help. You had Mike Arthur, who was honored yesterday, John Jost, Brian Bailey, Paul Koch, Randy Goebel, all those guys who were around for forever developing players. And it was just all part of the repetition and the machine that Nebraska had going on. That people say, well, that doesn't work. You tell me Alabama right now isn't disciplined in the way that they make their players do what they need to do to buy into it. They probably have adjusted to the times, but there are still bedrock principles in place at the best programs that this is how we do it, and you are not going to change it. And if you don't like it, you can leave. But those who want to invest and stick around, it will pay off for you individually and as a team. And I saw a piece yesterday. I rarely watch game day, but I happened upon it. Gene Wojciechowski did a story on all of the coaches who have been kind of reclamation projects under Nick Saban. And they've got this inner circle table where all the full-time assistants sit, and then everybody else is on the outside. It's like the inner circle and the outer circle. And there are Division I head coaches who have gotten fired and got an opportunity in Nick Saban's program, but they're making like $30,000 a year. Not that they weren't making $5 million elsewhere, but they're making $30,000, and they've got to like babysit the really young guys in their football camps and clean up the pool, literally. But Mike Loxley, Butch Jones, Lane Kiffin, and there was 3 or 4 that they talked to, and Bill O'Brien, and they got an opportunity because Nick Saban helped them, and they were humbled, and they learned what it is to really and truly do what you have to do to build a program based on discipline, organization. And once you have that foundation, you can do great things. And I would say Alabama has done that, and Nebraska did that and could do it again.
I think Alabama is the epitome of discipline right now in college football, and I think you could probably throw in Ohio State, even Clemson, and a few others that have won or been playing in or won national championships in recent years. Georgia, for example. Georgia's another one that could be the epitome of discipline in this day and age of college football. On the comments, I'll get to your comment here in a moment here, Elijah, but there's a comment from Greg here on the chat that anyone surprised that it wasn't Eric Shenander that was let go now and then, or let go of Frost after October 1st. I'm surprised. I guess I'm kind of surprised that they probably didn't make a move with that right away either. But I think you want to keep all your position coaches intact for the rest of the season. And then, of course, with Mickey Joseph being the associate head coach, now moving into the interim role, you don't want to upset the apple cart too much. But I think a lot of people were thinking that after last night and even after Northwestern too.
Well, real quick, this is the Varsity Blues where Bud Kilmer gets fired at halftime and the players start calling plays in the second half and win the state title or the district title. You got to keep some adults in the room, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great reference.
Go, Elijah.
Yeah, and I was pretty much going to say the same thing in terms of I don't think when you look back at the last 4 years, this is not a firing because of the last 3 games. This is a firing because of what has occurred over the past 4 years plus 3 games. When I look back at the past 4 years plus 3 games, the major fault of the program is not Eric Shenander. He's had his faults in the past 3 games, but this firing was not because of what happened even last night. This is a firing that occurred because of what the program looked like and the trajectory of this program over the past 4 years. And you're not trying to make a quick fix here. And by firing Shenander, that'd be you trying to make a quick fix the defense so we can save Scott Frost's job. This was a culmination of what happened and the decisions that have been made at the top of this Husker football program over the past 4 years that led to the firing yesterday. So I don't think a firing of Shenander would be warranted, despite the fact that I don't think that Shenander is probably going to return next season. That's early to say. But I don't think Shenander's the one at fault for the issues within this program as a whole, and therefore it falls upon the head man. That's why Scott Frost is the guy that we're letting go of today. And Will, it looks like you want to jump in.
I want to ask a question to all 3 of you guys. We haven't touched on it at all. It's kind of the elephant in the room, I think. We already got comments on it. We brought up people who we think we should bring in. I'm not saying I think we should, but Urban Meyer is being tossed around a lot. I want to get your thoughts on that topic right now.
I'll jump in first here. This is something we hit on the Hail Varsity show a couple of times. Could that name be on the short list for Trev? Sure, it probably should be on the short list for Trev, but I don't think this is a guy that Trev wants to bring in. This is like a backup plan if your other plans don't work out, because of the whole can of worms you'd be opening by bringing Urban Meyer here to Nebraska. Would Urban Meyer win here at Nebraska? I don't doubt that he would. I think he would be able to come in and lead this program back to a bowl game and probably do it fairly quickly. But based on the history of Urban Meyer, I don't think you want a coach that's only going to be here for 3 years and then hand the reins off to somebody else. I don't want a coach who's going to be I'm not going to go to the bar story. I'm not going to go there. Okay. I could make the joke, but there's just such a can of worms and all the skeletons in the closet that it's not Nebraska. And sure, Husker fans want wins, and I'm sure Urban Meyer would bring wins, but there's a whole bunch of other coaches in this country that could also bring you wins on the football field with a place that has the resources and the support of Nebraska.
And I think what you're trying to say is there's too much baggage with Urban, is what you're getting at. And I think Trev Alberts is very well aware of that, like everybody else is. But are you looking for a quick fix? Are you looking for a quick turnaround? That's the question. I think Urban, if he were to be considered and to take the job, he could probably turn things around in a quick fix. But you have to weigh everything else in perspective too. The baggage that he's had off the field, and of course being at one place for, like you said, a 3 or 4 year stretch, Elijah. You want somebody that's going to be in that position for quite a while. We're not looking at 5-year contract deals and then you move on. I mean, you want somebody there that's got stability. It's going to be in Lincoln for a long time.
And I want to get back to a point that Bill made earlier, and Bill, let you hop on here in just a second, that Trev Alberts is not the type of athletic director that's going to let a head football coach walk all over him. And I think Urban Meyer wants to go to a program, or would want to be the be-all, end-all to a football program wherever he goes. And that would not fly with Trev Alberts. That's the main issue in my mind, is that Urban Meyer, if he's at a football program, he's the guy. That football program is his. And that's not Trev Alberts' style. Trev Alberts is going to be the man in charge, and he's going to have a guy working under him, not alongside him, not next to him. He's going to have a guy working under him that reports to Trev Alberts, and that is just simply not Urban Meyer. Now, Bill, that was a great point you made earlier. I'll let you hop in on that same topic.
That's 100%. It's professionalism, integrity, and Trev. It's Trev's athletic department. There's a character. Look, the memes are already out there. If you go on Twitter, you can see Urban Meyer and that picture and Nebraska and all other stuff. And that's not, and this is not an indictment of every coach who's ever been around Urban Meyer, but what was his name? Was it Ryan Smith or somebody who was another assistant coach at Ohio State who got in a lot of trouble and was on staff for a couple of months? I apologize, I don't remember the name, but Ryan Day was also on his staff, and by all accounts is a high character, wonderful representation for Ohio State football right now. So again, not an indictment on everybody, but Urban Meyer's had his issues. He's had people that he's brought on staff that have had issues, and I just don't think that that's something that Trev wants to have to deal with. If you want to throw big names, I'm just doing this not to speculate who it might be. A Bob Stoops as a big name coach, I think would be in the character fit with what Trev wants to do. And I'm not saying that he's the guy. I'm just saying, if you're looking at big names, and I've heard the John Gruden stuff out there, who can work with Trev and understand that Trev is the boss, and understand that Trev understands the 1.6 million people in the state and the millions around the country who have invested their hearts, souls, and money in some instances into the Nebraska football program. And I think Trev, remember Bill Byrne had the famous quote, and I thought Bill Byrne was one of the great athletic directors in the last 50 years. But the donors of substance that I listened to was a famous quote near Bill Byrne's tenure that really put Nebraska people off. I don't think Trev views Nebraska fans in any class system like that. I think it's the farmer out west, it's the construction guy in Lincoln, it's the businessman in Omaha. Everybody's part of it. Trev represents everybody and understands the character, and therefore whoever's going to come in here has to fit in the mold with everybody in the culture of Nebraska. Some big names would, some big names wouldn't. But when you've got memes out there with guys at a bar, that ain't going to fly. That's not going to happen.
And I want to add to this as well. I don't think Trev is afraid to make a splash. That's not what we're saying here either. It's not that Trev's unafraid to make a splash. And I do think there needs to be a major change. You mentioned the culture of Nebraska, Bill, and I agree with that. There is a culture and a standard here at Nebraska, but I think there's also been a problem within this Husker football program over the past 25 years that every coach here has been living in the shadow of Tom Osborne. Bo Pelini didn't live up to standards because, well, he didn't behave like Tom Osborne did on the sideline. Scott Frost, you thought it's going to work out because he's being influenced by Tom Osborne. He knows the Tom Osborne way. You can go back to Callahan and to Solich. All these coaches lived under the shadow of Tom Osborne. I don't think Trev would be afraid to make a hire of a guy who's going to tear this foundation, tear this program down to its foundation. I don't want to say eliminate the Tom Osborne influence, but to take it in a new direction. No one's done it in that sense. And I think that's what it's going to take to be able to get this program back to where the Husker fans want it to be. It has to be a tear down to foundation. I'm not saying eliminate the foundation. I'm not saying build an entirely new property, but tear it down to its foundation. You have a chance to do that with NIL, the way college football is changing, with NIL, with college football playoff expansion coming. That's going to change things here in the coming years. With a brand new facility you're opening up on campus, it's time. You are able to completely take this program in a new direction and change what Husker football means. And I'm not saying go on a different path and ignore the standard that's been set here, but you have a chance to completely change what Husker football is for the next generation of fans. And that hire starts, or that process starts with this hire.
So you're saying tear down Memorial Stadium and put it outside Gretna. Got it. Here's what's unfair for Mickey Joseph along those lines, because I hear you, and I don't think Trev's afraid of doing that, but I think it has to be somebody who understands that what he understands about the state and the fan base.
Yeah.
But
yes,
this is what I think is somewhat unfair for Mickey, because I think people perhaps around the country and maybe even around the state would go, here we go again. We just hired another former Nebraska quarterback. So I think that's unfair to put that on Mickey, that the only reason he is going to get this interim opportunity and maybe in line because he as for the job on a permanent basis is because he played football at Nebraska. You know, as I've followed Mickey's career from afar, and I mentioned this earlier, he's earned the respect of so many coaches down south and around the country for the path that he has taken to get to where he is to get this opportunity. So I think it would be unfair for them to just say, well, Mickey's getting it, the interim or the job on a permanent basis because he played football at Nebraska, and they're just dipping back into the Nebraska football family and seeing if he can get the job done where Scott didn't. That's where I think it's unfair for Mickey. I think he's getting this opportunity because it's important, and I think he's getting it on the merits. He's paid his dues. He's the guy that can keep this locker room unified, motivate the players to go out and play a game that Mickey does know is important to Nebraskans. So that's what I will say. I don't think Mickey is getting the opportunity because he wore number 2 back in the early 1990s.
If things go well the rest of the season, and let's say Mickey Joseph does not get the offer to be the new head coach full time, what about the likes of Mark Whipple? Do you think the next coach coming in would want to keep him, or let's just, like you said, start from scratch and rebuild?
If Mickey is not the guy, even if Mickey is the guy, I still think there's a lot of change coming both to he's going to build his program if he's the guy. And this program he has right now is not his program. And that's why I brought up that comment that we had in from Brennan earlier about, well, Mickey could bring in Vance Joseph and they could be the Bo Carl 2.0. And that's a little bit out there for me right now, but this would not be the continuation of Scott Frost's program being led by Mickey Joseph. This would be Mickey Joseph getting free reign and probably a whole new coaching staff coming in. And that's a conversation for somewhere down the road. Right now, I'm sure the only thing Mickey Joseph has in mind right now is how he's going to prepare this team for Oklahoma, what he's going to change in practice this week. And you've seen it in the NFL before with that bounce after a coach gets fired of a new regime coming in, even if it's just an interim and changing things. And I guess that remains to be seen. But Mickey Joseph knows, I think, that he is coaching for not only the Nebraska job right now, but another potential head coaching job down the line, where even if he is not the guy here at Nebraska and something within me tells me that he's not going to be the guy simply because of the things I laid out about how big of a change is needed here. And we'll see what the results look like. But he's also coaching for another potential head coaching job down the line because he's got a great resume, great credentials, and he's going to be a head coach somewhere someday, whether it's Nebraska next season, whether it's name a school in 5 years, I don't know. But there's a lot on the line here from Mickey Joseph, and I'm excited to see what he brings to this program because as we're hitting on about 20 minutes ago, and Will, I know we have somebody on the phone lines, but hang on with us. Promise we'll get to you in just a second. Based on what we've seen around the athletes within this program, I don't think there's an issue with building these guys up the right way in the weight room. I think the comment out there about an anonymous Big Ten coach this offseason about Nebraska being the all-bus team rings very true. Nebraska has a team full of guys that look the part. That's why they go get NFL opportunities. That's why you have these guys that never quite impressed you at Nebraska, but they go off to the NFL and do well. You have athletes. You have these monsters on the offensive line. You have guys that have dedicated themselves to the weight room. I don't think it's a hard work problem within the weight room. I think it was a problem within the coaching staff once game day actually hit on Saturday that you didn't develop a team full of football players. You developed a team full of athletes, not a team full of football players. Now, I think that was fully shown last night. Nebraska had a team full of better athletes than Georgia Southern, but Georgia Southern was full of better football players than Nebraska. And there's a difference between being –
Were they? Yes, they were.
There's a difference between being a great athlete and being a good football player, and this staff never put together a team full of great football players. They were never able to develop great football players. And one of the things that is just sticking in my head right now is it did not strike me as a team full of guys that played for the name on the front of the jersey instead of the name on the back of the jersey. And I think that's a result of the NIL era, but this was not a team full of guys that got it at Nebraska, got what it meant to be a Husker football player. And I don't want to say, they're only playing for their own glory. I'm painting with a broad brush here, but that's kind of what struck me last night. And I guess across this whole tenure was you didn't necessarily have guys that played for that name on the front of the jersey or the N on the side of the helmet.
Yeah, guys, let's go to the phones. 424-666-3776. We got Russ on the line. Russ, go ahead.
Hey, guys, thanks for taking my call. I'm a lifelong Husker fan, 54 years old, so kind of been here through glory days. Bill, remember all that. And, hey, Elijah, I just want to tell you, you need to put a Russell Wilson jersey next to Elway, slide it over. He's gonna win
Hey, this thing's signed. This thing is signed, baby. It's the signed John Elway jersey. Shout out to my buddy Aaron, who his family was moving out. They accidentally won this in a silent auction. They said, we don't want this thing around the house. Elijah's the biggest Broncos fan I know. So got Elway proudly hanging here, and I'm also wearing my Tottenham jersey today, too. So thank you, Russ.
So anyhow, the point I'm getting at is I saw on a website where Nebraska supposedly has the fourth most talented roster in the Big Ten, behind Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, or something, and we're number 4 if you look talent top to bottom. And so I think it's about putting all those pieces together, and Trev's going to have to find a coach that's going to be able to do that, because we all know that the AD is tied at the hip to his new coach, right? And if he doesn't get the job done, Trev's gone. So he got to get this right. I'm throwing out, I love Urban Meyer. All you people in Nebraska, all of us would live in our glass houses and think we're perfect. We're not. And your neighbor's not perfect, but, we all do the best we can. And I think Herb would be great here with a reclamation project for him to prove that he's a proven coach in college. Like I said, I think he would be a fit. But, I wonder about Chris Peterson. He's like he's kind of a down home Nebraska guy, and seemed like he did a pretty good job at Boise State and Washington. But like I think the biggest point I'm trying to make is that Trev's going to have to find a guy that he feels comfortable with and that can build this thing, because if he doesn't get the job done, then Trev's going to be looking for a job. And so that's the most important thing. And Brad, I hope Husker Nation can heal and that we can get behind the kids and Mickey and just give a good effort on Saturday against Oklahoma. That's what needs to happen. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Russ.
Russ, thanks for the call today. Yeah, and,
know,
and he makes a good point about moving forward. Actually, Bill, jump in here.
You mentioned Chris Peterson. Chris Peterson was at Boise State when I was in the Mountain West Conference, and I talked to him a few times. I did a real long form interview with him once, and that was when Boise State had it rolling. And to this day, I'm just amused. I always thought that he reminded me of Frank Solich, both in the way he talks and the way he looks, in stature, all of that. And I remember sitting there talking to Chris Peterson, and I kind of had a double take, like I thought I was talking to Frank. But he's a nice guy. But let me just say, Chris Peterson, I remember doing my research for that interview. I think has only spent like 1 year of his life, maybe 2, outside of the Pacific Northwest. I mean, not even. Well, he went to UC Davis, so he spent obviously a few years in college in Northern California, but he spent 1 season like coaching in Massachusetts or something, and everything else in his life has been Northern California, up the coast, and the farthest west after that was Idaho, or out east is Idaho. So I don't think anybody's getting Chris Peterson after 3 years now away from the game. I don't think they're going to get him back on the sidelines in Lincoln, Nebraska. Nice guy. Frank Solich 2.0, but not gonna. I don't think it would ever happen.
Boys, we got another caller on the line. We got Larry here on the phone. Larry, go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm not a long time Nebraskan, but I've been listening to you guys for the last hour, and I'm curious, just how much is Tom Osborne involved in the decision making in the program?
I don't think he's involved in the day-to-day stuff at all, Bill. Am I correct on that? I think he's pretty much retired. I think he comes down to practice maybe every once in a while, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's not a day-to-day thing where he's there and is ordaining stuff from a corner office at Memorial Stadium. I just think everybody who's a part of the program understands his stature in college football is what he's meant to the game, what he's meant to the state, and they should have some type of reverence for what he accomplished here and how he did it.
I'm not trying to be direct towards him, but he's 2 decades past his time. And it seems like he has an awful lot of influence that doesn't allow the program to advance to the current competition and status of what the game is all about. And
I don't think that's accurate.
Probably better off to have a whole popcorn and stay in his lazy boy than even have a presence on the stadium at the stadium. That's my comment. I'll leave it to you guys to discuss.
And I'll just say influence is the wrong word to use with Tom Osborne. It's more about the standard that he set. Everyone that's been here at Nebraska since Tom Osborne has been trying to live up to Tom Osborne. It's not that Tom Osborne's coming in here and giving instructions on how to run a football program. It's just that all the fans, all the media look at Tom Osborne as this light of this is the standard. This is how you do it at Nebraska. It's the one way to do it at Nebraska almost is what a lot of people out there think. And that's what it is. It's the expectation that Tom Osborne set that all these coaches now have to try and live up to.
And going back to Tom Osborne, when he first took over in 1973, I'm sure there was a lot of pressure on him to live up to the expectation that Bob Devaney built up in 10 seasons at Nebraska. The 2 of the last 3 years, they won national championships. And, so there's a lot of pressure, I'm sure, back then for Tom Osborne. But the difference with Tom Osborne is that he could not win the big game against Oklahoma. And, of course, that was broken in 78 when they beat him here in Lincoln. And they were carrying the goalpost down O Street downtown. And then there was consistency with him winning 9, sometimes 10 wins a season. And that kind of spilled over. The problem that he had toward the latter part of his coaching career is that there were bowl games. If I remember right, there were probably about 6 bowl games in a row that Tom Osborne couldn't win. And that included that national championship game in the 93 season against Florida State. And then all of a sudden next year, 94, 95, 96 was a miss, 97, boom. You got 3 national titles and you go out in a blaze of glory. So I think there's a little bit of, I think with the coaches that have been at Nebraska, there's some pressure to live up to that expectation. But, ever since Tom Osborne retired as athletic director, when he was there in that position for 4 or 5 years, I don't think he's had any sort of day-to-day influence whatsoever on that program. I think Scott Frost at times have maybe sought some advice from him, but I don't think he was overbearing, looking over his shoulder the entire time at all.
You would hope. I'm sure Tom has helped, and here's where we need some support for the program here and there. But yeah, I don't think that's the case. But you come to Nebraska, and one of the greatest coaches of any sport anywhere at any time is living down the road, and there's going to be a shadow. When Matt Campbell took the job at Iowa State, they're not talking about, well, you got to live up to the standard of Dan McCarney. That's not a tall shadow. Dan McCarney's a nice guy. He had some issues, but and did a decent job there, and eventually got fired. You don't go to Missouri and say, well, what's the shadow of Al Onofrio doing here? Woody Woodenhofer. There's only a few places in the country where the shadow of one of the greatest coaches continues to loom. Florida State, Mike Norvell, I'm sure still hears about Bobby Bowden, even though he has passed on, right? You think about Alabama when Mike DuBose took over, and then they had one of the Shulas. Gene Stallings came in and won a national championship, but he was still under the shadow of Bear Bryant in the early 1990s, and Bryant had been probably dead for 15 years. And they kind of stumbled around until Nick Saban decided to take the job. Ohio State, what was it, Earl Bruce? Was that
Woody
their
Hayes?
I mean, after Woody Hayes, but Woody Hayes had an unceremonious departure from there. But, he still kind of looms there. Schembechler at Michigan. You can count on, maybe fingers and toes, the number of coaches who still have an impact, whether they are in their 70s or 80s or gone. And Tom Osborne just happens to be one of them. But there are 500 college football programs in the country, and very few have this kind of legacy and history. And Nebraska just happens to be one in which the guy is still around. So if you come here and take the job, you better be reverential, for one. Otherwise, you just don't respect. And I think Nebraska had a head coach in the past 20 years that didn't have that reverence.
Let me jump in here, fellas. I just got to the stadium. The media's gathered, and we're awaiting Trev Alberts at 3:00. And you're listening to coverage. Coach Frost let go today. Bill Dolman with us, Jeff Moats, Elijah Herbal, and Will Wilson. We're on ESPN Lincoln and streaming across multiple platforms as well. But from an influence standpoint, whoever the next hire is, better make a phone call. Better consult with Trev as well. How do we, as a program, get back to the level of consistency that is demanded? What's the bar? The bar is bowl games, right? The bar is competing hard. Championships are preferred, but at least be in the conversation for them. Be able to compete into November. Didn't always beat Oklahoma, but guess what? They knew they were in a fight the last day before the day after Thanksgiving. Same with Nebraska. As you fast forward here, know that you've been in a fight. And it better get back down to development, be able to recruit some dudes, but find and listen to those who know the best way to develop. So you're not void on the lines of scrimmage, or you don't have that year that goes from 9 to 3. Okay. That's the input that's got to happen with Trev, with Tom, and whoever the next hire is. That was what was missing during the Frost era. On top of just being able to make some things happen on the field in tight ball games. But it comes down to development on the lines of scrimmage for this football program. And the next hire has got to get that and be able to do it, because that's what's been missing. You go back to Bo. Bo had guys that were super talented, and they were good enough to win 9, and they beat many teams that they, air quote, looked like within their own league. Yeah, there were some missteps on national stages, but you were in it for the most part. So it comes down to development here. That is the input that you will and can get from Coach Osborne. That's the input you get from Trev Alberts, because look at what Trev is. Trev's a guy that not only knows media because he was a part of it, but he also knows playing at the highest level because he was a butt kiss winner, for God's sake. He was an All-American, and then he was a fifth pick overall in the NFL draft. So the levels he's been at, his perspective's so ultimately unique that he'll be able to help guide you as well and know who to target candidate-wise that can get all of that and move Nebraska forward.
Yeah, guys, I'm seeing a tweet right now from a local media member. He says, Trev Alberts will confirm, but Nebraska is honoring the full remainder of Frost's contract, almost $16 million.
One more time, sorry.
Yeah. Of Frost, almost $1 million.
Well, you're breaking up, but I heard what you said. Is that the report is out there that Trev is planning on paying out the full buyout for Scott Frost, the remainder of his contract, full almost $16 million.
Wow. Wow. Well, if you're having the old Sunday morning meeting and excuse me, it goes down like this, Scott, we're going to make a change. And okay, I don't want to go, but if you're going to make that decision now, you're going to pay me to leave, right? And old Ed Orgeron said it best, the old Arkansas football touchdown club earlier this week. Here's the check. Great. What time you want me to leave? What door you want me to leave at? So maybe that was a situation like Ed's at LSU last year.
And he probably had somebody waiting out whichever door they wanted him to go out of.
And he was going to go have a boil, a good old Bayou boil. But geez, the whole thing, man.
Hey, if that's what it took, then that surprises me. But it doesn't surprise me. The decision had to be made. The move had to be made. You could not put Nebraska. It was not worth having the state, the fan base, go through the next 21 days, knowing what was probably going to happen, but still wondering just a little bit, and also having the rest of the country and the national media that loves to throw darts at the Huskers. I guess it's worth it to just say, look, it's over. Here you go.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving forward. So there's not 21 days of wondering, twisting in the wind, and taking arrows from all sides, so that they can take shots at Nebraska. Now it is the Nebraska job's open. Who's in? And now they can speculate about that. It's no longer Scott Frost is a punching bag. He's gone. Who's it going to be? Now you're going to have people talking about, is it going to be Bill O'Brien? Is it going to be Urban Meyer? Is it going to, you know why? Because they know it's still a big job, right? People are going to talk about the Nebraska job and speculate for the next 3 weeks or 3 months as to who's going to get it because it matters. Nobody's talking about what's going to happen to Washington State or Oregon State with their conference realignment. Nobody's talking about what's happening at Arizona State and Herm Edwards and the problems that they're having, or any of these other programs where their things are subpar. But for the next few weeks and months, they're going to say, who's getting the Nebraska job? Will it be Urban? Big names, right? And Trev might surprise everybody, or he might get, the big fish that everybody's been speculating. But the conversation has changed, and I guess, and I'm fine with it, it was worth it to do it now.
Schmitty, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
I got you.
I can hear you. Go ahead, Will.
I was going to Schmitty, around there right now. Just set the scene for us because we're about 15 minutes out from that press conference.
Yep, you just have media gathering right now. There's several news cameras set up in the hallway. It is a bit of a guessing game for what elevator Trev will take to get up here. But the lead right now is the main elevator, right? So you've got 3 or 4 different cameras set up, different journalists, and the media pool with Nebraska. They are gathered in the press box region where usually you're getting a slice of pizza or a salad. That's the region where we normally have our Monday press conferences. So that is where it's at right now. Really, a little bit of discussion going on, milling around, but The wait right now is for the walk, right? The walk from Trev to the podium to lay out. And if the $16 million is accurate, then that is the price of doing business, fellas, to move forward. And to piggyback on Bill's point, absolutely, you change the conversation and get a little bit of positive momentum about this storied opening that now exists, while you have a situation with a season still that can be salvaged with Mickey Joseph. So it's what you do. It's what you do. If that's what it took to move forward, and that's what it took to move forward, and you make the change, and we'll hear Trev in about 13 minutes or so here, as Chris Schmidt with you here on StreamYard, Elijah Herbal, Bill Dolman, and Jeff Moats, along with Will Wilson, as we're continuing coverage here of Scott Frost being let go by Nebraska, and Trev Albert set to speak and lay out the plan moving forward. And the criteria, October 1st, again, was looming with the day the buyout dropped to 7.5. But we've detailed the last 2 hours just where Nebraska was at, the impact of last night, but really a culmination of tough results for the Nebraska football program, and a change needed to be made. And there's been a lot of thank yous to Coach Frost on social media. There's been a lot of thank yous by top brass here with the University of Nebraska and the athletic department. But it is a results business. As Trev has said many times, you don't get tenure in coaching, and Nebraska's moved forward.
I think we were kind of suspecting this was going to happen at some point here between maybe the end of the North Dakota game and the bye week on when something would be done. At least that was my feeling. I thought something like this would probably take place had Nebraska won last night and maybe got beat by Oklahoma this Saturday. I personally felt that if a change was going to happen, it'd be right after the Oklahoma game or during the bye week. What were your thoughts on that? Same feeling?
Well, it was tough with the North Dakota result. Ireland was what set things sideways with the result, and how you had momentum. You had a double-digit lead twice. The ill-fated international incident, as we've dubbed it, the onside kick. But no, I mean, you had a window and no ink or email, but you needed to be getting out of September 3-1, right?
Right.
And you're going to be flipped around. You're going to be 1-3, likely. So yeah, you had a chance to get off to a good start with being brought back for this season from last year, and it just was a question of when. And you couldn't wait any longer if you're Nebraska to make a change and move forward to get the.
Now he's got bad Wi-Fi.
I think we might have lost Schmitty.
Pretty ironic where he froze with the background that he's got with him behind him. Pretty ironic.
Can you screenshot that? Can you screenshot that and save it?
That is awesome.
Right, Jeff, you've been around maybe almost as long as me, but you can remember those days in 2000, whatever it was, when Frank was let go, and what it was like. Yeah, what it was like through the end of the last few weeks of the season, and was it going to happen? Would Frank get to the 9 wins? And there was all that speculation. Then there were some stupid rumors going around town.
Yeah.
But for basically the most of the month of October, and certainly throughout all of November, there was speculation. And then the win over Colorado, and then it's like, and people around here were just twisting, and it was maddening, and factions and all that. And then for 40 days, you're wondering. Then he fires him and has just buffoonery at the press conference talking about there's no talent here and we got to have NFL players and all that. And then we're saying, okay, this is the guy. We've now come together after a month and a half of division. And now we're focused on who the next guy is going to be. And then for 40 more days, we end up with Houston Nutt on a tarmac in Arkansas
Yeah.
with no information whatsoever. Okay, now, today, it's done. 15, 7, 4, whatever $1 million. It's not my money, okay? Maybe, I don't. Look, but the bottom line is, it's done. You can move forward. And people can speculate about Scott, but Trev's now going, we're going this way, okay? We're not going to twist these Husker fans and these players anymore. It's done. We go forward. And I think I said it earlier. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it.
And, go back to that 2003 season. I think it was the Kansas State game that maybe set things into motion with the rumor mill. Now, before the season, remember the year before in 2002, they went 7-7. And that was the first time that Nebraska had not won at least 9 games in a season since 1968. When Devaney went 6-4, didn't make a bowl game, and people were clamoring that, is Devaney the right guy for the job? And look what happened here a few years after that. So when you look back at that 2003 season, and I remember the night when everything went down, because in a former radio life, I was the network producer, and I remember our colleague Gary Sharp caught wind of what happened, and he called me and he said, you know what? We got to break this on the air. Let's do it during halftime of the game. Tell the guys doing the game, make it brief with their remarks, and send it back to the studio. And then we went on the air with it, and I remember the switchboard and the studio phones lit up like a Christmas tree, and you would have thought that the worst thing that could ever happen to Nebraska football, firing a coach that won 75% of his games and finished the regular season at 9-3, you thought everything was dropping out from the bottom. And we now know in the 19, 20 years since that point what's transpired, and it's been inconsistency, bad decision making. Steve Peterson, everybody's pointing the finger at Steve Peterson for that. It might have been somebody else higher than him on the food chain. So there's a lot of things that have transpired, but I think with somebody like Trev Alberts in there today as the athletic director, you're going to see things happen, and it's going to be done constructively. It's going to be done the proper way. There will be a search. There will be a list of candidates. He will look over what Mickey Joseph does here in the interim over the next 9 games to see what he may bring to the table. And I think this time it's a little bit more structured than it ever has been.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I bring up a name?
It's just more, again, it's just worth it to let people move on now and not have to go through what we did 20 years ago. It's happened, and we've already gone through it for 3 weeks and 2 years.
Yeah.
Now we can move on.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Will. Sorry.
We got about 5 minutes till we get to that press conference. I wanted to bring up a name. I haven't brought up a name all day. It's a thought, everybody's saying we've got to get back in that Texas world, try and revolve that area down there. What about Gary Patterson? You ever thought about that?
He's a Kansas guy.
Thinking about him. No.
He's a Kansas native. He spent a long time at TCU. I worked with him down there, and he's on staff with Texas now, and his wife Kelsey is a Texas alum, and so I think I think what he did yesterday was pretty good. But what he did yesterday is certainly going to put him in the conversation, for a lot of jobs based on just based on one game with what Texas did to Alabama. And again, he's got Midwest roots in the Kansas State tree. And, he's at that age, probably upper 50s, I would bet, to where he's going, I got one more challenge in me, and I am not afraid of that one. Yeah, he is not afraid to take on a challenge, but he's not a Big Ten guy. But he does have deep, deep roots in the state of Texas. There ain't no doubt about that.
And I'll just say there's going to be a lot of names thrown out between now and Thanksgiving. And as the college football season changes, as teams rise, as teams fall, these names are all going to be in flux. So there's great names out there right now, but part of me thinks it's a little bit pointless to be throwing out names. I feel like Trev's got his short list, and I don't think Trev is going to be sharing that short list with anyone between now and November. And the speculation we threw out there today is purely that it's speculation.
Yeah. And again, USC didn't throw out names last year either. Everybody else did. But they had an interim coach, gave them that shot, didn't work out. So when it came time, they had their guy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And this, what's going down behind the scenes with Trev Alberts, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that it's the most important stretch for Husker football since probably dating back to that Frank Solich hiring, however many days it was between the firing of Frank Solich and the hiring of Bill Callahan. It's the most important era for Husker football dating back to that day, just with the apathy that you see in the fans right now. And as you were talking about, Bill, the mood leaving the stadium last night, where there is this dejected feeling of this is what Nebraska's become resigned to. And it's almost the laughing stock of college football. So, I mean, if you mess up one more hire, I am scared to see what this Husker football program looks like in 5 years. You don't have any room to mess up with this hire simply because of the trajectory of the program and what the national sentiment surrounding Nebraska is. If you mess up one more hire, I don't think it's crazy to say that you may never recover as a football program as a whole, despite the resources that you have here, but because of what it's going to do to those resources and to that support if you mess this one up. It's not crazy to say this is the most important 2 months for Husker football dating back to 2004, 2003.
I respect that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we got about 2 minutes until the press conference. Schmitty, what's the word over there?
Still waiting as you have more cameras gathered near the elevator, just in the hallway here at Memorial Stadium on the 6th floor. And Trev Alberts set to address the media with Nebraska moving on from Scott Frost. And Trev will lay out why. And then you'll look forward to Oklahoma week and Mickey Joseph as interim coach and his opportunity. And here is Trev now, and we'll join here shortly.
Yep. I got it ready to go. We'll start playing it when the official press conference on the Nebraska Twitter page is up and going. Bill, what are you expecting to hear from Trev today?
A man with a plan. A man with a plan, and that will speak to Nebraskans, speak for the Husker program, and I trust him. You know, I thought I trusted Steve Peterson, but I don't think that Husker fans will get burned by Trev. I don't think you're going to hear details in terms of who and what. I think you're going to have an idea what the parameters for the hire will be, when, and all that. But there's no names or anything like that. But Trev's going to speak to Nebraska and Husker fans.
Sure.
You know,
and guys, here I was thinking that I was going to have a nice lazy Sunday sitting upstairs on my couch watching NFL for 7 hours and stressing about my fantasy team. Man, even like 12, 30-year-olds, I'm flipping on the NFL games to start the day, and then I check my phone and I go, wow, why do I have 17 missed messages? And I go, oh!
I wish we weren't going through this, you know, and I think everybody, we were just so hopeful when Scott got the job for a variety of reasons, but just didn't work out.
I got Trev. Let's bring him on right now. Here's the official press conference.
And I can tell you that I really wanted this thing to work. Our donors wanted it to work. Everybody wanted it to work. And so, in a way, it's unfortunate and sad that
internet is being...
that we're here today.
Here we go.
I want to thank Scott. I also want to thank Mickey Joseph for taking on this role. I felt like there's 9 games left in the season. And I think we owed it to the players. We owe it to our fans to give these players an opportunity these last 9 games. We've got good players on this football team. And so having a different voice and having some new energy and enthusiasm, I'm hoping can make a difference for this team. And then third and finally, I think at the end of the day, there has to be accountability. When you run a professional organization that has high standards, accountability has to matter. And, you know, Matt and I talked about this very clearly. 16-31 obviously was not at a level that was acceptable to us. So I met with Scott this morning at 11 o'clock. I'll just kind of walk you through the process of the day. I met with Scott at 11 o'clock, and and informed him, I want you to know that Scott was extremely collegial and good. I wasn't surprised because I know how much Scott loves this place. I think that's really important. We then both had an opportunity to go down and meet with the team. We sent an email to our team. Most of the team was here, so we got to meet with our team. And Scott was with me, and I thanked the team, and I thanked Scott in front of the team for all of his hard work. I think the team really cares about Scott, and I know Scott really cares about the team. I then gave Scott an opportunity to spend time himself with the team. And so we all left. Scott spent time with the team, and those conversations will remain with the team and Scott. And then finally, I invited Mickey Joseph, and Mickey came in about 11:45 and spoke to the team and walked them through some of the changes that he envisioned. I communicated to Mickey as the head coach. I won't meddle in Mickey's decision-making process. I encouraged Mickey to be the head coach and make decisions as the head coach. And so he'll ultimately have an opportunity probably with all of you to explain. I think there will be some changes. Explain some of the changes with the team. There'll be some structural changes and things that I think Mickey believes in, which will be good going forward. He can explain all that to you. Just want to tell you a little bit about the process going forward, and we'll open it up to questions. Obviously, we're going to do a national search. You know, we're going to engage some third-party help, mostly for logistics and other things. Want you to know as well, and I would encourage our fans and everyone to recognize there will be a lot of rumors out there. There's going to be a lot of innuendo. I want you to know that these sort of decisions and processes are not made in a silo. I have a lot of great mentors and friends that we'll be working with. And ultimately, you know, in a prior life, I have relationships with a lot of coaches in this business, and I intend to reach out to a lot of people. And so if you hear that Trev Alberts reached out to XYZ coach, it doesn't mean that I've offered the job to XYZ coach. I think there's some fabulous coaches out there that have a perspective about our job that I could benefit from. And so reach out to a lot of people. And so if you hear that Trev Alberts reached out to XYZ coach, it might very well be true. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to hire that coach. I'd like to get that perspective. I'd like to get a perspective of a coach who isn't here right now about our job and what the uniqueness is and the needs and those sorts of things. So just wanted to be clear about that process. Obviously, there's been some changes in college football with the early signing date and transfer portal. There are considerations as we go forward as well. But most importantly, I'm going to do everything I possibly can, like I think we did for Scott, to support Mickey Joseph and the staff as best we possibly can. It's a group of young men that they're hurting. And, you know, they care deeply about this place. And so we're going to do everything to support them and help them. They've got 9 games left. We've got a great opportunity this weekend against Oklahoma. And so we're going to support them as best we can going forward. All right. I guess we'll open it up from comments and questions here.
Why now as opposed to October or the end of the season?
It's a good question. It's a fair question, Annie. It's, you know, at this point, I just felt like, as I mentioned earlier, we owed it to the players, you know, to give them a different voice, perhaps slightly different vision, give them some confidence and opportunity. We've got 9 games. We've got seniors on this team that have invested a long time. And I know how disruptive these changes are. You're not just affecting the player's life, you're affecting all the coaches and their family. And I understand that. But we needed to do something. We needed to inject something into this team to give them the confidence and hopefully help them compete. Nothing would please me more than to see a pretty significant change and help this team get over the hump and win some games.
The buyout was supposed to drop in half on October 1st. How did you handle that? Was there a negotiated settlement, or does Scott get the $15 million?
There's no negotiated settlement. The University of Nebraska has a long history of living up to what we've agreed to. And so the contract is what the contract is. And of course, the university will comply as we always do.
Did you have to summon any outside help from boosters?
I won't get into any discussions about outside boosters or any of that sort of thing. But
Trev, when did you actually make the decision? Last night?
Yeah, I think last night. Not a lot of slept. Didn't sleep a lot, and a lot of us didn't. But some real concern. throughout the first couple games, and wanted this thing to work. We give a little extra time, and I think last night, and then through the night, and then into this morning, I really felt like we needed to make a change.
If they won, would that have changed? If they get a stop?
I don't know, Sam. I mean, I don't want to get into the what ifs if they stopped here on third down or got this. I mean, I don't think that's really healthy. We are where we are. We're 16-31. And I want to give this group of players an opportunity to have a different voice to try to win this year.
Do you have a short list of coaches you're considering at this point? Or you just start with a very broad?
Well, Steve, I want to first say, first of all, we have not engaged in any third-party folks. I have not talked to any agents of any football coaches. We were all in to help Scott be successful. Everybody wanted Scott to be successful, and I believe Scott wanted Scott to be successful as well. So listen, yeah, anybody in my position has a group of that they admire. At the end of the day, for us, we need to get some clear definitions about what those coaching qualities look like. What is our unique culture need in terms of coaching, and ultimately, what is our culture going to be as a team? So yeah, there's a group of people that I'm well aware of and interested in, would like to talk to. And we'll go through that as we move forward. But right now, in the immediacy, Steve, we've got an opportunity to support the team as they move forward.
What chance does Mickey Joseph have to earn the job on?
Well, I met with Mickey and I told him, we were going to do a national search. And so we'll continue to do a national search, and we'll see how the season unfolds. But I think we have an opportunity to hire an outstanding coach that can lead our program. And I'd love to see Mickey, grow into that, and we'll just see where it goes. But again, we'll do a national search, and if at that point, Mickey is an obvious candidate, he'll be part of that conversation as well.
Trev, where do I guess, what kind of expectations do you have for the program now? I mean, what do you think the ceiling is, and where would you like the team to go?
I won't get into specific, ceilings or where to go. Listen, we've said all along, I'd just love to see this team continue to grow, compete, make progress, have a team that represents the values of Nebraskans, be tough, win the line of scrimmage, do the fundamental things that teams need to do to win games. And I think we can get there. We'll stop talking about championships or stop talking about things we used to do. We'll just get really process-oriented, detail-oriented, and ultimately, when you start doing those fundamental championship habits type things, as I think about them, those types of wins and things follow. But we need to stop focusing on that. We need to start focusing on those small fundamental things that ultimately lead to those types of things. And so those are the things we'll do.
What are 3 or 4 qualities that you really want in a good head coach? You hire many head coaches at other places. Talking intangibles, not necessarily resume things.
Sam, I've always believed that, great coaches are people of character. I think they're people managers. They're culture builders. I think they're grinders. A lot of the great ones don't have a whole lot of hobbies. It's all they know, and so those types of things. And I think young people, as we've moved forward, have changed a little bit. So I think being able to identify and relate to the modern student athlete and all that they're going through, and all of the new things like NIL and all those types of things are very important. But the basic fundamentals of authentic leadership, is this somebody that the players are willing to follow? It's just basic types of leadership things that are really, really important to me. And I like people who hate to lose. I like people who hate to lose more than they enjoy winning. And I got to be really careful when I say those things, because I certainly don't mean to infer and imply that our previous coach didn't have those things. And I want to be very clear about that. That's not fair to Scott. What I'm saying is that's what I have found, no matter if it's a football coach, basketball coach, or a volleyball coach, there's some very core and key fundamental characteristics that help to define each of them. And those are the types of things that I believe in as well.
Trev, when you look at the coaching market and just the salaries and how much they've gone up, how competitive can Nebraska be in this current market of coaching salaries?
Yeah, I'm well aware of where the market has shifted in terms of compensation, and at a place like Nebraska, we're blessed to be in a position to meet market demand, and certainly resources won't be an impediment towards hiring the type of coach that we want to lead the Husker program.
What part makes are you that this didn't work?
Andy, I hadn't put a lot of thought into that, Andy, but I thought it would work, and listen, we all have short memories, but Scott Frost was among the absolute leaders in that cycle of coaching. And Scott's a good football coach. Scott's going to go on and be a successful coach. I told him that this morning. And he agreed. Scott's a good football coach. And the right situation for him will emerge, and I think he'll be very successful. I was determined to work with him and try to balance, Andy, that very delicate balance of not meddling, because it's the last thing I think administration should do, is start dictating to coaches how they operate their deal, but be supportive. And but it is what it is. It didn't work, and that's why we're here today.
What are some of the specific qualities that he has that made him right for this role?
Well, Mickey's an energetic guy. Some of you have interacted with him already. He's pretty black and white, and I was in there when he talked to the team, and he, I think, sees this as a real opportunity for him as well professionally, and all of you will get a chance to talk to Mickey. I think he has an infectious personality. I think that's important. He's been some places, so I think that benefits him. I think he has some different feelings about structure and approach and how he'll handle practice and some different things. So there'll be some immediate, fairly significant changes into his approach. And he had a very poignant conversation with the team today that I thought took very well. And at the same time, I think, like Scott, Mickey will love them and seek to serve them.
This being a unique program, what sort of qualities do you look for in a person to run this kind of program? From that specific slant of it, just the intense interest and all that.
Well, I don't know if there's anything specific to, how magnified the role is. I certainly think it has to be somebody that has a servant leadership mentality, that's here to serve young people, that perhaps sees a picture bigger than themselves, if you will. But I don't think anything specific. I mean, every single job in college football, this job has advantages to other jobs, and it has some disadvantages. It's the same thing with every job in college football. We have 1.8 million people in this state. That's not going to change. But we got some built-in advantages here. So we need to play to our strengths and build on those, right? And so the right kind of coach, I think, sees this as an opportunity to rebuild something special here.
Why do you think it worked? I mean, you've been here now for however many games, 15 games. Why do you think Nebraska was 4-11 in those games?
Sam, I don't know. And, and I'm not trying to be flippant with you. If I knew, we would have made some changes. I don't know the answer to that question.
Did you see something in cross coaching style practice or in games that disappointed you or frustrated you?
I could spend a lot of time. I don't want to spend a lot of time going backwards and looking at and evaluating Scott, only because I think at this point it's a little unfair to Scott. We've moved on. Certainly there's things that you observe and you'd see and you'd say, well, maybe I'd do something different. We would have conversations. But at the end of the day, Scott Frost was the head coach. And I promise you, Scott made decisions that he thought were in the best interest of the University of Nebraska. They were genuine. He believed that in his heart. Okay. And so that's really important. I don't want to spend a lot of time evaluating Scott's performance over the last 5 years. I think, at the end of the day, Scott's no longer the head coach here, and we'll move on and look forward to, I think you'll see some of those changes and you'll get to talk to Coach Joseph about that. But mostly I just want to salute Scott, and, he'll always be a Husker, and he's from the great state of Nebraska and always be welcome here. And we want to support him in that role.
Other questions for Trev? What's the when you timeline? You ideally want to have a coach in place, whether it's Mickey or it's someone else, right after the season, or like how long is that you envision that taking?
Well, I do think there's some benefits in terms of making the decision when we made it. I think this gives us an opportunity to really, do the necessary work. We need to dive into a real process and a detail-oriented process that talks to a lot of people. That's why I mentioned earlier, you're going to hear about a lot of names. That's good. That means we're going to talk to people because we're going to clearly define what our values are. And we're not going to hire coaches who don't believe in what we believe in, Sam. And so we need to take as long as it takes to find the right leader. So is there an ideal timeline? Sure. I mean, you could naturally look at some of these timelines, early signing date, and say it'd be really nice to be able to get the person in place by then. It would allow us to do that. But we won't make decisions or rush things just to get a coach hired. We're also not going to try to win the press conference. All right. At the end of the day, we need to hire the right leader and the right fit. And that's a really important thing here as well.
We talk to the recruits at all, or we have a chance to visit with the recruits, or we let the coaches just kind of handle that from here on out?
I'll do whatever Mickey asked me to do. I really enjoy talking to the recruits, prospective recruits. You've probably seen me out on the field, and I really enjoy talking to those young men. I will do anything I possibly can to be supportive of the football coaching staff, but I will not get in the way. And so ultimately, what I would do with Scott is every time we talked, I'd ask, can I help? Am I doing anything that's counterproductive? I'll do the same thing with Mickey. What can I do to help? I want him to be successful because ultimately that means our young men are being successful. So I'll do whatever Mickey and the staff ask me to do.
Trev, for you personally, do you feel like the hiring of this next coach will define your tenure as Nebraska's athletic director?
No, I think you guys will probably define my tenure. That's how it works. But no, I don't think about those kinds of things. I'm no different than Scott. I love the University of Nebraska, and like I said earlier, I'd really hoped that the day I got introduced here as the athletic director, that I'd never have to be doing this. I really thought that I could work with Scott, and that's what everybody wanted. So we'll do the right things. We'll do the best that we can. Every decision we make here, whether it's right or wrong, we'll learn later, but they are always done with what we think is in the best long-term interest of the University of Nebraska and our athletic department. And this place will always be bigger than any one person. And that is the way it has to be. And so we'll do the very best that we can, and we'll dive into the details. We'll surround ourselves with good people, and we'll identify the next leader of Husker football.
Back to Mickey for a second. Why him as opposed to anyone else on the staff?
Well, I think that I went through a lot of folks too. I mean, you can naturally make certain arguments, certain places, and Mickey's not calling the plays. Coach Whipple is. And so there's a lot of responsibilities for the head coach that lie outside of football. You can only imagine with, Fox coming this weekend. And, we need to have coach focused on game planning and play calling all week. And obviously defensively, we've got some fairly significant adjustments to make. And so Chins has got to be really focused there. And so, I think that Mickey, his personality, his energy and enthusiasm, I think, and we need a different voice, right? We need to provide hope for these young men. I mean, you've got a lot of young men in that locker room that at the end of the day, football's a tough sport. You have to force yourself to do things you don't want to do physically. And so having somebody that can pull that out of you and motivate you to do that, and in my observations of Coach Joseph, I think he has some of those attributes, and I'd like to see him function in that role.
Anything else?
Was there anyone else relieved of their duties today, or was it just Coach Frost?
Just Coach Frost. Again, Mickey Joseph is the head coach, and if he chooses to make some of those additional changes, we will support those changes as well. But I am not aware of any of those that he anticipates at this time.
Thank you.
All right, so Trev Alberts, the official press conference ahead of the news that Scott Frost is no longer the head coach at Nebraska. Mickey Joseph is the interim head coach. Elijah's with me. We're going to get Chris Schmidt back on here. Bill Dolman will be jumping on as well. And Jeff Moats will be back with us as well. We're simulcasting on KFOR and right here on ESPN Lincoln, along of all of our social media pages. Elijah, some quick reaction after hearing what Trev Alberts had to say.
I mean, I got a text from my brother during that presser, and I can't agree more.
Go ahead. You're good.
I can't agree more with what my brother texted me during that press conference. That Trev Alberts is a gem. I mean, that's a hard thing to go do the press conference post firing a coach, and I think he said it perfectly. And that's not something you want to do. That is not something that before the season started, Trev Alberts said, you know what? I sure hope that I get to go hire my guy this offseason. It's not that at all. Trev has the best interest of the university at heart. He went up there and he was professional. He was classy about it. He didn't get into the what ifs or what if Nebraska wins that game last night. Didn't get into it. This is the simple fact of the matter of what I am seeing within the football program. And, I mean, laid it out like it was. Didn't say anything that's going to rock the boat, I don't think. But he acted like a true professional, and he understands the gravity of this situation. That's the main thing I took away from that press conference. He understands the gravity of the move he just made and what this next couple months coming up is going to mean, not only for him and his legacy, but the future of this Husker football program.
Yeah, Bill, what did you think of the Trev Alberts press conference?
Well, he said we're not going to try and win the press conference, but he won the press conference. And I sat here thinking, as somebody, I remember Trev when he was a player and watched, his career as he's growing into this incredibly important position. When he got the job, I thought it was, he was the absolute right guy at the right time for the job that he has. And he proved that again. And, I sat here watching thinking, I remember when Steve Peterson did what he did, and it was disastrous. And it was phony. And I thought about, Sean Eichhorst and thinking, oh my gosh, just, how weak that tenure was. Coach Osborne obviously is the North Star for all of us and for the state in many ways. Bill Moose is a smart athletic director. He knew what to say, when to say it, how to say it, in that regard. Trev's got the acumen and the mind, the heart and the soul to say what he said, and I believe it. I believe what Trev said. He outlined a lot of the key points. You could sense the media savviness that he brings, the understanding, the speculation. You're going to hear names, and it's true. And here's why. I've also not talked with any agents. People always overlook that. I haven't talked to a certain coach, but I've been talking to this agent for months. He said, look, this is how it's going to go down. I trust him. And I trust that he made the right decision at the right time, and we'll find the right person at the right time when that time does come. I think the Mickey Joseph opportunity is fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing from Mickey as to what Mickey has to say. I think it's important, because you have somebody, and he mentioned that he's earned the respect through all the opportunities that Mickey's had in his career to get to where he is. We talked about that before Trev went on. Well, look, it's important for the University of Nebraska to take this step, to have its first African-American head coach, even though it's in an interim basis. It is important. And it's been in the back of my mind that I think this is a great opportunity for the university to move forward, to give Mickey Joseph a well-earned opportunity and to give him a fair shot. And if he earns it and he gets it, great. And if things don't go well for Mickey over the next couple of months, you know what? Nebraska gave him the opportunity he deserved, and we just move forward. But, for the state of Nebraska and and I don't think Trev was trying to make some political or cultural statement. It's just he's given the guy the opportunity that he's earned. And I think it's something to be celebrated in that regard, too, on a tough day.
And Bill, something to note. I like your point out, Mickey Joseph, not just the first black head coach in the history of the football program, the first black head coach in the history of the athletic department as a whole. That is huge, huge, not only for Mickey Joseph, but for this program. And it's kind of almost unbelievable that there hasn't been a single black head coach. And that is something that I don't want to get swept under the rug today, because that is just almost borderline unbelievable that is happening, and it's 2022. But that is a huge point to underscore.
Guys, you got me okay?
Yep, we got you.
We just wrapped up. You heard Trev Alberts, Bill Dolman, Elijah Herbal, Will Wilson, continuing coverage across different platforms with ESPN, Hail Varsity, KFOR 96 Kicks, and YouTube TV. So you guys have been touching on Trev's points throughout the press conference and made his decision last night. And Bill, the thing, and we were talking about some names, right? We go back almost 3 hours ago with this coverage once the news broke with Scott Frost being let go. It was pretty impressive with Trev with how he did the presser. Was able to touch on what Nebraska needs and not just talk about championships, but what it takes to get there. And also, it's not about winning the press conference, right? So it's going to be a fit. And Trev's got all sorts of connections. And Trev knows people that have been out of coaching, that are still in coaching, but his reach is massive, Bill, with where he can get intel from to make the best decision for Nebraska moving forward. Money's not going to be an object or an issue. And Trev's very realistic about where Nebraska's at. There are some advantages, there are some disadvantages, and let's be quite honest about where Nebraska's at right now. He's said it before in the past where, it ain't 1993 anymore. I mean, he's been very frank about that. So I thought he did a marvelous job laying things out, and class act by Trev to thank Scott, and then just the process of allowing Scott to have some time with the team, with the kids, with the coaches, and then also have Mickey meet with the team and move forward. And really, it kind of came down to motivation and energy. I mean, that's the two words that come to my mind with that new voice Trev was talking about.
Yeah, I agree with you. He won the press conference. He spoke from his heart, spoke with his mind, spoke eloquently. He does have a lot of trusted advisors. Whether they told him how to craft the statement, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think he did exactly what he thought he should do, and I'm sure he consulted with people. But yeah, every step along the way from the last, 12 hours or 16 hours, I'm sure it's been very, very difficult, but it was not a knee-jerk reaction.
No.
I watched the game in Dublin, and Trev was walking the sidelines, and you could see him on TV, and I'm sure he got a vibe for how things were going on, on the bench, what the organization was like, what the motivation like, what the spirit was like, And we talked about just one singular play, how detrimental that might have been to the psyche of the team when all of a sudden they're up by 11 and then they've got to go back after the kick. It's not this kick in particular, it's just the response and the psyche and the body language and understanding as a former football player what's going on there. And then you see, like the massive hole where there's no defensive lineman in that shot and Nebraska's getting blown off the ball. And then the game against North Dakota's not going well. They come back and just the whole, everything was in totality. And as I said before, Trev went to the podium. Yeah. Could he waited 3 weeks and save some money? Yeah. But understanding the heart, the soul, the passion of the fans and the players in the locker room. And you and I talked about this last night, Chris. At some point you can't say, well, we'll get him next year. When you have guys who have been here for 3, 4, 5 years fighting and trying to make it work, and you're just going to say, well, guys, thanks for what you do, but we're going to try and get things better for the guys behind you. No, you have got to look out for those players who have invested and stuck around in the NIL era. And I'm a big Logan Smothers fan. Okay. Logan has stuck it out when a lot of guys in other programs and guys like him, not just him specifically, and it's not working out. I'm gone. God bless Noah Vedral. I hope he does well at Rutgers, but he's on his third college, right? But Logan has stuck it out, and he gets one snap in this game and one snap in this game, but he's still here. He might leave. I don't know. It might be, so loyal to Scott, but I look at that and you say, we're going to do the best we can for the commitment that you and others have made to this university. And we're going to give you the best opportunity to succeed this year. And it's going to be a new voice. It's not going to be easy, but we believe in the people who are here, and we believe in what you've done, and we're going to try and make the most of this experience for you and hope you stick around and be a Husker forever. If it doesn't work out, we understand. But he had to do something to honor the passion of the fans, their loyalty. 85,000 last night, and those players in the locker room who have stuck it out through some tough times, and they're still here, and we're going to make the most of it. And I'm going to do the best I can to find the best leader, and we hope that you're a part of it going forward. I honor
and Bill, that's a great point. I've seen comments out there today about, no football player is going to want to come play for a program where turnover happens every 4 to 5 years. Well, the simple fact of the matter is this isn't the 1980s anymore. This isn't the 1990s anymore. With the NIL era, as you said, people can transfer whenever they want to. You are putting yourself behind the 8 ball because nobody wants to come play for a losing football program. And the simple fact of the matter is this is a losing football program at Nebraska, and it's bigger than one guy, as Trev Albert said. This program as a whole is bigger than one guy. So this wasn't a decision made on a whim. I feel like I'm just rehashing points we've made throughout this entire show, though. Not a decision made on a whim. This is a culmination of 4 years plus 3 games of losing, of a loser's mentality within the team. And it was time. It was time for a change. It's time to see what somebody else has got, because Scott Frost did not have answers to fix this program. If he did have answers, those answers would have been implemented by already. It was a guy who was out of answers, and a guy who not only did he need a fresh start, but Nebraska needs a fresh start.
Well said by Elijah Herbal. Will Wilson, some final thoughts. Bill, we'll have you also have a final thought, unless you guys want to keep going another 6 hours. I mean, but we can wind down coverage. Thanks to you, Bill. Thanks to you, Will, for being all over it. Elijah, you're incredible as well. And big thanks to Connor Clark and Jeff Moats for sure for jumping on. But my 2 cents is this, that it was just this sounds harsh, but it was just a necessary move. Okay. And it's now time to, if you're a Nebraska fan, rally around Mickey, rally around the kids in the locker room. And Trev nailed it. You owe it to the kids in the locker room to make a move and move forward and still try and go, air quote, win them all with 9 games left. And OU comes in. And you needed to make a change. It is about motivation. It is about voice. It is about structure. It is about how you go about doing things. And none of that was working. You're 5-20 in 1-score games. And that's a giant body of work. And I believe Trev when he says Scott is a good football coach. He is a very good football coach. Well, he'll be a better coach somewhere else after this. And sometimes you absolutely learn through failure. And it was just sad that it had to happen. It had to happen to one of Nebraska's own that was so championed coming in. But some tough love lessons learned during the Frost era. And wish Scott and his family nothing but the best moving forward on a personal note. But Trev making the tough call today, and Nebraska football can take a deep breath and see what Mickey gets the team ready to rock and roll and do. And we'll be all over coverage this week for Oklahoma. More coverage tomorrow with KFOR with Schmidt, Carroll, Dale, and Jeff 6 to 9 a.m. And then we'll be ready to go on the Hail Varsity Network. Bill, a final thought from you. Will, a final thought from you, and then Elijah, put a bow on this for us.
It's having lived through so much change and great times and bad times, and I just continue to think about the fans as they left the stadium last night. And this is as bad as I can remember it being, but this is an opportunity for a new start, a good leader in Trev, good people in the program, and it was a necessary move. And I know it's 3 weeks earlier than the time frame that people expected, but given what Trev understands, what anybody who's been around understands, it was just time. And I think about how hopeful people were and excited they were when Scott got the job, and thinking this is it. And it just didn't work out. And at some point, Scott will get another opportunity. Might be a great assistant coach for a while, and might get an opportunity to be a head coach again. But it's Trev, and right now it's Mickey and Husker fans. I think will respond on Saturday. There'll be a lot of people there because the rivalry renews, and I think people for the rest of the season will cheer Mickey and the team on and understand that that's Nebraska fans' role to come back with a smile on your face, fill Memorial Stadium, enjoy competitive football, and see what we can all be a part of together moving forward. And Trev understands that, and I think Husker fans will respond too.
Will, a thought from you, partner?
Yeah, you guys have been nailing it really all day. Everything's pretty much been said. I hope everything's good with Frost. Hope he can find a career somewhere else. I'm with you guys. Obviously, he's shown some things of being a good coach, but his time here is done. Trev is the right man to be in charge. I think we all are trusting him, and we'll see what happens. Mickey is the guy, right? He's done some good things already. I'm just ready to see how this season goes and where we go from here.
Elijah, you are still just showing off that Denver jersey. I mean, it's just appropriately placed. It is the day of the quarterback. You go from one to another as far as to lead this football program, and Nebraska fans are hoping for a completion.
Yeah. I said it earlier. I think whenever you were driving over to the broadcast, or the press conference, excuse me, I was not expecting this when I woke up this morning. Maybe I should have been. I was expecting a nice day of sitting in front of my TV watching NFL, and wow, never a dull day in Husker media, is there? So it's a new era, a new dawn for Husker football beginning today. It starts with Mickey Joseph. He gets a 9-game run out to see if he's the right man for the job. And moving forward, I think I've said my piece on today's show. It's a sad day. But it's also there's a feeling of relief that that experience is now over, and the excitement for the future. And we're gonna have a fun week of shows doing it. I know Will and Bill are gonna rock it. I think I'm actually in with you guys tomorrow, Will, from 9 to 11, as we have a job shadow going down the morning hookup. So I'll be checking in with you guys tomorrow morning, and then Schmitty and I will be rocking tomorrow 4 to 6. It's gonna be a hell of a week of shows with Oklahoma looming, and it's never a dull day. But I'm going to be sitting on my couch the rest of the day watching NFL action and trying to process all of these thoughts that we've kind of laid out here over the past 2.5 hours and get them all set for a fun week of shows coming.
Well, again, pick a winner tonight for the vet bill. Okay. So,
Go
Bill,
Vikings.
appreciate you. Yeah, appreciate you, Bill. Thanks, Will. And Elijah, you take care. Chris Schmidt signing off with Hail Varsity and ESPN and KFOR and 96 Kicks' coverage of Trev Alberts and, of course, the Scott Frost departure. Back at you tomorrow. Thanks for your time.